Chapter 581. Shangwanli was clearly in a bad mood, and Li Mu knew that it wasn't just a day or two that she was in a bad mood towards him. In the past, Li Mu had at most taken away some of the Empress's love, but now, he had even taken away the Empress's person. Li Mu poked at her sore spot, so she poked at his sore spot in return. For a man, those words were extremely insulting. Fortunately, Li Mu's skin was thick. Although she was a woman who liked women, Li Mu still couldn't lie on the bed with a clear conscience. He got up from the bed and sat on the chair beside the table, saying, "You're injured, you sleep on the bed." Shangwanli didn't get on the bed, but poured herself a cup of tea and drank by herself. Li Mu also poured a cup of tea, took a sip, and then asked, "Ali, when did you start to like women?" Shangwanli glanced at him and lightly said, "What does it have to do with you?" Li Mu shrugged and said, "Since we're idle, why don't you tell me, how did you start to like Her Majesty?" Shangwanli simply ignored him. The reason for her special feelings towards the Empress, Li Mu could somewhat guess. She had been by the Empress's side since she was young, and couldn't come into contact with other outstanding men. The Empress treated her like a younger sister, giving her full trust and protection, so it was natural for her to like the Empress and be close to the Empress. Li Mu wasn't jealous of her, nor did he see her as a love rival, nor did he discriminate against her sexual orientation. It was just that the Empress would be his sooner or later, and if Ali couldn't walk out as soon as possible, the one who would be hurt in the end would be herself. Seeing that she was ignoring him, Li Mu said, "Actually, I feel that you don't like Her Majesty that way. To you, Her Majesty is like a sister. She has always protected you, loved you, and you worship her, but this isn't love." Shangwanli finally looked up at him and said lightly, "You're not me. How do you know what I'm thinking?" It was a good thing that she was willing to respond. Li Mu continued, "As I said, your feelings for His Majesty are more of worship and admiration. Perhaps you don't like women, but only His Majesty. Think about it, have you ever had feelings for other women?" Shangwanli looked at him with disdain and said, "Do you think I'm like you, lecherous man? My love for His Majesty is unique." Li Mu asked straightforwardly, "Do you know what it feels like to like someone?" Shangwanli coldly snorted, "I don't need you to teach me." Li Mu said patiently, "Liking someone doesn't mean that you want to be by her side for the rest of your life. Friends also have this idea. Think about Sister May. Don't you want her to be by your side all the time? Do you like her too?" Shangwanli thought about it and immediately shook her head. Li Mu continued, "Your feelings for His Majesty are not that kind of love. You want to be with him for the rest of your life because you're used to it. You may meet a man in the future who wants to be with him for the rest of your life. You'll be angry because of him, but you'll also be happy because of him. When you're happy, you'll think of him. When you're unhappy, you'll also think of him. When you're in the most difficult and helpless situation, you'll still think of him." Shangwanli fell into deep thought, and then shook her head again. "That's right." Li Mu clapped his hands and said, "When you meet this person, don't hesitate. Boldly pursue him. He's the one you really like." Shangwanli's face showed an incredulous expression and asked, "Is this liking?" Li Mu said with certainty, "If this doesn't count as liking, then what does?" Shangwanli looked at him and fell into a long silence. After an unknown period of time, she looked at Li Mu again and said, "I'm going to sleep." With that, she walked to the side of the bed and lay down in her clothes. Li Mu did not sleep. He sat in front of the table and closed his eyes, beginning to comprehend the contents of the heavenly tomes. Although he had deciphered all the heavenly tomes in his hands, to truly master them, he still needed to put in a lot of effort. The next day, when it was close to noon, Li Mu opened his eyes. He turned his head to look beside him. Shangwanli was lying on the bed in the same position as last night. Her hands were behind her head, and her eyes were open as she stared at the ceiling. He did not know what she was thinking, as if she had not slept the whole night. In the Ghost King Palace, the servants were busy as usual. Ever since the young master entered the new madam's room last night, he had not come out. The servants in the palace were already used to this and did not find it strange. After an unknown period of time, the door of the palace opened from the inside. 2 figures walked out. The servants bowed one after another. "Greetings, young master." "Greetings, madam." Li Mu, who had turned into a little Rakshasa, waved his hand and said, "Dismissed. I'll bring madam around to familiarize herself with the house." It was not until the two of them were far away that the servants of the Ghost King Palace opened their mouths in surprise. What's wrong with the young master? In the past, he would abandon the brides after playing with them for 2 or 3 days. Why is he treating the new madam so well this time? It's not strange. I heard that the new madam is a human expert, and her cultivation is no weaker than the young master's. She was personally captured by the Ghost King. Of course, she's different from the previous ones. If that's the case, the palace will have a new madam in the future? Who knows? Let's just do our own thing. Don't ask about other things that you shouldn't ask. Li Mu wandered aimlessly around the Ghost King Palace with Shangguanli. It seemed like he was bringing her around to familiarize herself with the place, but in reality, Li Mu was not familiar with the place. It was too risky to recklessly capture a servant and search their soul. There was also the risk of being exposed. Before plundering the Rakshasa King's treasure, Li Mu did not want to be exposed. Although 7th Realm experts usually had their own Flask Heaven space, the Flask Heaven space of the 7th Realm was not very big. They might carry some important treasures with them in the Flask Heaven space. As for other basic resources, the Flask Heaven space could not contain them at all. What Li Mu needed were spiritual jades, soul energy, and other basic cultivation resources. He had many treasures on him. The Dao Bell for defense, the sky-piercing spear for close combat, and the sun-shooting bow for long-range attacks. As for other things, he was not interested in them at all. After passing through another door with Shangguanli, a 3-story palace appeared in front of Li Mu's eyes. The palace's entrance was heavily guarded. There were actually 4 5th Realm ghost cultivators. A palace that could be guarded by so many experts was naturally not an ordinary place. Just as Li Mu walked forward, another ghost cultivator cupped his fists and said, "Young master, Lord Ghost King has ordered that no one is allowed to come near this place." Li Mu glanced at him and said, "Of course I know. I don't need you to remind me." Then, he looked at Shangguanli and said, "Madam, remember, Father doesn't allow anyone to come near this place. You shouldn't come near in the future either. Otherwise, if Father blames you, even I can't help you." In order to cooperate with Li Mu's act, Shangguanli could only accept this form of address. She nodded and said, "I know." Li Mu left with Shangguanli. After passing through another door, he said, "Give me your hand." When Shangguanli heard this, not only did she not do as she was told, but she also took a step back. She hid her hands behind her back and looked at Li Mu warily. A few black lines appeared on Li Mu's face. He said unhappily, "What are you thinking about all day?" "I want to use my mystical power to enter that palace. If I don't hold your hand, how am I going to bring you in?" When Shangguanli heard this, a trace of shame flashed across her face. She hurriedly stretched out her hand. Li Mu, on the other hand, did not move. He snorted and said, "Since you don't believe me, then wait here by yourself. I will go in alone." Shangguanli hurriedly took the initiative to hold his hand. She lowered her head and said softly, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." Chapter 582. Shangguanli's hand was icy cold. After she took the initiative to hold his hand, Li Mu gazed at the palace in the distance, silently calculating the distance. Contrary to Li Mu's feelings, Shangguanli held hands with a man for the first time. She only felt that his palm was strong and warm, just like when she was held by His Majesty when she was young. This gave her a sense of security from the bottom of her heart. Li Mu held Shangguanli's hand with one hand and formed a seal with the other, silently saying, "Okay." He took a step forward, and the 2 figures strangely disappeared on the spot. When they reappeared, they were already inside the palace in front of them. After countless practice, Li Mu already knew that the principle of distance reduction was similar to space jumping. It could ignore any obstacles between 2 points, except for formations. He had already sensed the fluctuations of the formation in this palace, but it was not outside, but inside. In the incomparably spacious main hall, in front of Li Mu and Shangguanli, there was a mountain of spiritual jades, ranging from low-grade to mid-grade to high-grade. This Rakshasa king's wealth was actually much richer than that of Qinhu nation. Thinking of the wedding banquet held at least once a month in the Ghost King Palace and the exorbitant entrance fee in Fengdu City, Li Mu did not find the scene in front of him strange. Rakshasa king was obviously an expert at fleecing people. No wonder he wanted to build such a large palace in his residence. Just these spiritual jades alone were not enough to fit in the flask heaven space that he could create in the 7th realm. Li Mu's 9th realm abode was more than enough to fit these spiritual jades. However, outside this mountain of spiritual jades, there was a protective shield that was filled with faint black fog. He let go of Shangguanli's hand and carefully observed this protective shield. With the warmth of her hand still lingering, Shangguanli felt a sense of loss. She raised her head and glanced at Li Mu, then quickly looked away. At this time, Li Mu discovered that this barrier was a defensive array formation. Moreover, its grade wasn't low. After deciphering the Spirit Array Faction's heavenly book, Li Mu's knowledge of array formations was extremely rich. After carefully studying the array formation for a while, Li Mu fell into deep thought. It wasn't that he couldn't break this array, but it would take a long time. There wasn't enough time for him to slowly break the array. Of course, other than techniques, one could also use brute force to break the formation. The formation in front of him was only a matter of a few spears or arrows, but in that case, the commotion would definitely be earth-shattering. It would alarm the guards outside and Fengdu City's Rakshasa king's subordinates, and things would become incomparably troublesome. Li Mu thought for a moment and took out a paintbrush. Back then, he had learned the art Dao from the Empress for a long time. Not only had he flirted with the Empress, but he had also truly learned some true skills. However, the art Dao was a special ability. It was very difficult to directly use it in battle, but it couldn't be more suitable to use it here. Li Mu held the paintbrush in his hand and held his breath. When the tip of the paintbrush touched the barrier, his entire person entered a strange state. His arm moved slowly. Very quickly, a door appeared on the barrier that was surrounded by faint black fog. Li Mu walked through the door. The array formation wasn't touched at all. Under Shangguanli's strange and shocked gaze, Li Mu waved his hand. The mountain of spiritual jades in the hall disappeared into thin air, leaving only an empty ground. After that, Li Mu walked out again. With a light stroke of the paintbrush, the barrier returned to normal. Done. Li Mu put away the paintbrush and slowly flew up to the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor was filled with countless wooden shelves. Countless soul bottles were placed on them. In the cultivation world, spiritual jades and soul power were the most basic cultivation resources. Who knew how much the Rakshasa king had accumulated, but at this moment, all of them were in Li Mu's pocket. The 3rd floor of the hall was filled with spiritual herbs. Li Mu did the same and didn't leave a single stalk for the Rakshasa king. Although this kind of behavior was somewhat like that of a bandit, the Rakshasa king was the bandit first. Moreover, Li Mu wasn't a good person. The principle he adhered to was that if people didn't offend him, he wouldn't offend them. If people offended him, they wouldn't be able to settle it without paying a price of hundreds of millions. Just as Li Mu had guessed, there wasn't a single precious treasure in this treasury. Presumably, the Rakshasa king had taken it with him. However, he could only leave these spiritual jades, soul power, and spiritual herbs produced in the ghost realm at home. Inside the demon emperor's cave, the little Rakshasa king, whose cultivation was restricted and tightly bound, was thrown into a corner of the space. At one moment, he saw a mountain of spiritual jades in front of him, and then dozens of wooden shelves with countless soul bottles. After a while, spiritual herbs produced in the ghost realm fell like raindrops. His face was filled with shock and his heart was filled with bewilderment. What were that adulterous couple outside doing? After ransacking the last hall, Li Mu extended his hand to Shangguanli. This time, she didn't say anything and obediently placed her hand in Li Mu's hand. Li Mu took a step forward and the two figures disappeared on the spot. Outside the treasury, several 5th realm ghost cultivators were still conscientiously guarding the place. Li Mu, who had returned from a rewarding journey, held Shangguan Li's hand and took a leisurely stroll in the Ghost King manor. The ghost servants in the manor kept bowing to them. "Greetings, young master and young madam." Li Mu's expression was cold and arrogant as he ignored these ghost servants. The little Rakshasa king was usually this arrogant in the manor, so it wouldn't attract any suspicion. If he could avoid conflict, it was best not to. He wasn't afraid of the Rakshasa king, but once his identity was exposed, the devil path might send experts to capture him. If it was someone like the Yu and Ming elders, Li Mu wasn't afraid. If he couldn't win, he could always escape. However, if there was another 10,000-year-old monster like Blood River and a devil path elder, his situation wouldn't be optimistic. Returning to the side chamber, Li Mu first kept the 4 bamboo guard spies in the Demon Emperor's space. Then, he planned to leave with Shangguan Li directly to the land of the fallen gods. When the Rakshasa king returned, he would find that his treasury had been emptied by Li Mu. When he walked out of the side chamber, a figure floated in front of him. It was an old man. When he saw Li Mu, who had turned into the little Rakshasa king, he didn't show much respect. He just cupped his hands and said lightly, "Young master." The little Rakshasa king had a 6th realm cultivation. Li Mu couldn't search his soul, and he didn't know the ghost cultivator in front of him. In this situation, it was better to say more. He glanced at the old man and said, "I'll bring young madam out for a walk." The old man didn't think much and stepped aside. Watching the two of them walk away, he just shook his head. For someone like the little Rakshasa king to be able to cultivate to the 6th realm, it was all because he had a good father. This time, he found a human 6th realm Tao companion. His cultivation might be able to advance even further. To think that he had cultivated bitterly for 100 years to reach his current realm. In this world, there was really no comparison between ghosts. Li Mu and Shangguan Li held hands intimately and walked safely to the entrance of the Ghost King Palace. About 10 steps forward, they were outside the palace. At this moment, more than 10 figures suddenly rushed in from outside. These were all female ghost cultivators. They were quite good-looking, and their cultivations ranged from the 3rd realm to the 5th realm. When they saw Li Mushi, these female ghosts rushed over in a flurry. "Husband. You haven't been to her place for a long time. You can't forget about your old love just because you have a new one." Surrounded by these female ghosts, they wanted nothing more than to press their soft and perky bodies against Li Mu. More than 10 pairs of hands touched his body naughtily. Li Mu instinctively pushed away the things on his body and took 2 steps back. This feeling of being surrounded by strange female ghosts and touching his body made him extremely uncomfortable. However, this action caused a female ghost at the peak of the 5th realm to change her expression. She had been with the little Rakshasa king for 10 years and was one of the people most familiar with him. The person in front of her looked like the little Rakshasa king, but he felt very different from the little Rakshasa king. She stretched out her arms and stopped her sisters. After taking a few steps back, she stared at Li Mu and said coldly, "You're not the little Rakshasa king." "Who are you?" A female ghost behind her said in surprise, "Sister, what are you talking about? He's obviously our husband." "No, he's not." The female ghost stared at a certain spot on Li Mu's body, then looked at her own hands and said in a low voice, "He's not the little Rakshasa king. The feeling doesn't feel right." Chapter 583. Never in his wildest dreams would Li Mu have thought that after he had fooled the entire Ghost King Palace, and had almost slipped away without a trace, he would fail at the doorstep. These gorgeously dressed female ghosts were each more seductive than the next. They were all the wives and concubines of the little Rakshasa, and they knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. Li Mu could transform into the little Rakshasa's appearance, but the appearance and body shape were only the surface. How could Li Mu possibly know the details? Moreover, even if he wanted to, he did not know the little Rakshasa's size and touch, who knew that his harem was filled with a bunch of female perverts. On the opposite side, the female ghosts all showed signs of alertness. The strongest one even formed a seal with both hands, forming 2 snakes of yin qi. The snakes were as thick as buckets and several feet long. They opened their huge mouths and lunged at Li Mu and Shangguan Li to devour them. Li Mu raised his head to take a look. Two beams of golden light shot out from his eyes and struck the giant snake's head. The giant snake's body immediately collapsed and dissipated into the void. Human sixth realm. The female ghost's expression changed drastically. She raised her head to the sky and let out a shrill shriek. At the same time, she crushed a jade talisman in her hand. As the jade talisman shattered, countless auras erupted from all over the Ghost King Palace and Fengdu City, rapidly closing in on them. At the same time, on the four walls of Fengdu City, black light flashed wildly. In an instant, a gigantic semicircular dome appeared, enveloping the entire Fengdu City. What's going on? What's going on? Why has the Great City Defense Formation been activated? Could it be that a strong enemy has invaded? The sudden turn of events caused the ghost citizens of Fengdu City to turn pale with fright. They raised their heads and looked at the dome above them. One by one, figures flew over their heads and headed in the direction of the Ghost King Palace. Li Mu sighed inwardly. He had wanted to keep a low profile, but in the end, a conflict was still unavoidable. Looking at the countless powerful auras approaching them, he turned to Shengguanli and asked, "Do you want to hide in the cave first? I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of you later." Shengguanli snorted and moved closer to Li Mu. She stuck close to him and said, "Don't look down on me. You just advanced a few days earlier than me. I can protect myself. You just have to take care of yourself." Her eagerness to excel was carved from the same mold as the Empress. Furthermore, she was even more outstanding than the Empress. Li Mu did not say anything more. His figure slowly rose into the air. Looking around, countless figures were currently rushing over here. 3 of the auras were abnormally powerful, and all of them were at the 6th level. 2 of them were eerie, and the last one was a human. 3 6th realm powerhouses surrounded Li Mu and Shengguanli from 3 different directions. The female ghost below said sternly, "Lord Consecrator, capture them. He's not the little Rakshasa." The eyes of the elder that Li Mu had seen earlier flashed, and he asked in a low voice, "Who are you? Where is the little Rakshasa?" Since his identity had already been exposed, Li Mu did not need to hide anymore. His figure and face changed, and he returned to his original appearance. The only human among the 3 6th realm powerhouses said in a low voice, "How dare you, human? How dare you cause trouble in Fengdu City? What are you waiting for? Capture him first and hand him over to the Ghost King." This person was a middle-aged man with a thin face. He wore a black robe with a pale white skull embroidered on his chest. Although he was a human, the aura on him was even colder than ghosts. As he spoke, a ghost fork appeared above his head. The ghost fork split into 2, 2 into 4, and soon, there were hundreds of them. They shot toward Li Mu with extreme speed. The power of each of these ghost forks was enough to kill a transcendent. Even Dong Xian would have to be serious when facing hundreds of them. The other 2 elders did not make a move. Clearly, they wanted to use this person to test the strength of this intruder. Facing the ghost forks that covered the entire space and sealed the entire void, Li Mu's body flashed with a golden light. The shadow of a bell enveloped him and Shengguanli. The ghost forks pierced the Dao bell and dissipated. Only one of them let out a deafening sound and broke. The middle-aged man's body trembled, and his aura weakened slightly. He was shocked and blurted out, "What kind of Dharma treasure is this?" This ghost fork looked ordinary, but it was a treasure in his hands. He had used it to kill countless enemies, but it was broken just like that. While his heart ached, he looked at the shadow of the bell, and a trace of fire appeared in his eyes. He quickly approached the bell and used all kinds of spells to bombard the bell. However, he could not break through the bell's defense. To be more precise, there was not even a splash. The middle-aged man was shocked and angry. He said sternly, "Coward, don't hide in the bell if you have the ability. Come out and fight me fair and square." As soon as he finished speaking, the bell's shadow around the person in front of him slowly disappeared. The middle-aged man was delighted. This person was indeed young and could not be provoked. A blood-red long saber appeared in his hand. He raised it with both hands and slashed down fiercely. A blood-red saber light that was hundreds of feet long locked onto Li Mu and reached him in an instant. When the middle-aged man took out the blood-red long saber, the two old ghost cultivators revealed a smile on their faces. The cultivation world was incomparably cruel. Giving up one's advantage because of a little provocation was undoubtedly a very foolish action. Being locked onto by the blood-red saber, there was generally no suspense about the outcome of this battle. If they were in the young man's shoes, they would also be seriously injured. The middle-aged man floating in the air also thought so. This blood-red saber had drained 70% of his magic power. He looked at the young man under the blood-red saber and waited for him to be split in half. Suddenly, a cold light appeared in his eyes. The moment the cold light touched the blood-red saber, the blood-red saber directly collapsed. However, the cold light became even more intense. The next moment, a long spear appeared in front of him and pierced through his body. His body was pierced, and his primordial spirit was also severely injured. He had no chance to react at all. A golden rope was wrapped around his body. With his remaining strength, he could not break free at all. Li Mu held the long spear in his hand and stepped on the middle-aged man's body in the air. The world was silent. Blood Saber, Lord Blood Saber pays his respects. He defeated Lord Blood Saber in one move. Is this person a powerhouse of the upper realm? It's over. Lord Ghost King is not here. With such a powerhouse invading, Fengdu City is going to welcome a big change. There was a lot of discussion in Fengdu City. The expressions of the two sixth realm elderly ghostly cultivators changed drastically. After looking at each other, they joined forces to attack Li Mu without hesitation. They were no match for the Blood Saber alone. Only by joining forces would they have a chance. While the two of them attacked Li Mu, the dozens of fifth realm ghostly cultivators near the Ghost King Palace set their sights on Shangguanli. In Fengdu City, many powerhouses took out their Dharma treasures and flew towards Li Mu. Facing the two sixth realm ghostly cultivators who were rushing towards him, a bow appeared in Li Mu's hand. He knocked the bow and casually shot an arrow. Wherever the arrow passed, a black line appeared in the air. The speed of the golden arrow was so fast that it was impossible to dodge. It pierced through the chest of an elderly man. At this moment, 90% of the dense Yin energy on his body dissipated. Li Mu reached out his hand and grabbed at the air. A large illusory hand appeared in the air and grasped the elderly man's extremely weak soul. As long as he clenched his fist lightly, this sixth realm powerhouse's soul would scatter. This was the result of Li Mu being merciful. If he had increased his transcendence energy by just a bit, this ghostly cultivator would have died under the power of the sun's shooting bow. One should always leave a way out. Li Mu had no enmity with him. There was no need for him to be calculative with a worker ghost under the Rakshasa king. One spear and one arrow. Out of the three sixth realm powerhouses in Fengdu City, one was under his foot, and the other was in his hand. The entire Fengdu City suddenly quieted down. The other elderly man's figure that was flying towards Li Mu stopped abruptly. The Yin energy on his body tumbled, just like the shock and fear in his heart. Not far away, the ghostly cultivators of Fengdu City who were planning to swarm forward to help the two consecrators and gain some credit at the same time fled for their lives at a speed faster than when they came. When they raised their heads to take a look, their already pale faces turned even paler. The ghostly cultivators who were attacking Shangguanli also stopped one after another. Fear appeared on their faces. The remaining sixth realm elderly man calmed himself down. He looked at Li Mu and said with difficulty, "This junior was blind to have offended senior. I hope that senior will not blame me on account of the Rakshasa king. If senior has any requests, this junior will try his best to fulfill them." Li Mu crossed his arms and said, "I don't have any requests. I just want to leave Fengdu, but you guys won't let me." At the entrance of the Ghost King Palace, the flirtatious female ghost knelt on the ground powerlessly. Her face was full of regret. If she had known that this person was an old monster who had concealed his cultivation level, she would have pretended not to know and let him go. How would things have turned out like this? Chapter 584. Ghost King Palace, Central Hall. Li Mu had planned to leave, but they forced him to stay. Although he didn't want to expose his identity, he had already fought. If he left right after the fight, wouldn't he have wasted his transcendence energy for nothing? He sat at the very front of the hall, on an extremely luxurious chair made from a single piece of supreme-grade spiritual jade and carved with dragons and phoenixes. Below him were the servants of the Ghost King Palace, including 3 sixth realm consecrators. Shangguanli stood beside Li Mu. Li Mu looked up at her and asked, "Ali, do you want to sit too?" Li Mu wasn't the empress after all. He felt uncomfortable sitting here with his friend beside him. Shangguanli glanced at Li Mu and shook her head, "No need. I'm used to standing." Li Mu grabbed her wrist and shifted his butt to the side, saying, "You're used to standing, but I'm not. Anyway, this chair is big enough for 2 people." Shangguanli was forced to sit down by Li Mu, but she didn't say anything. However, after witnessing that scene with her own eyes, a complicated feeling spread through her heart. Experts of the same cultivation level as her couldn't even block a single blow from him. She didn't know when it started, but Li Mu's cultivation level had already caught up to hers. And now, she couldn't even see his back. Li Mu didn't feel anything. His previous opponents were all 7th realm experts like Elder Xuanzong and the Elder of the Demon Sect. The Dongxian he met was also a 10,000-year-old monster like Patriarch Blood River. He rarely fought with cultivators of the same cultivation level. Due to his lack of experience, he didn't know how to hold back. So when he fought just now, he held back. If he was careless, at least one of the 3 sixth realm consecrators would die. Under Li Mu's gaze, everyone lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. Li Mu looked at them and said indifferently, "Devil King kidnapped my friend and forced her to marry his son. Since Devil King isn't here today, I didn't want to bully the weak and planned to settle the score with him when he returned to Fengdu. However, all of you refused to let me off and forced me to make a move. If the ghost cultivators standing in the hall had intestines, they would definitely be green now. The people of the Ghost King Palace would get married every few days. Some of them were willing, while others were forced. However, in their eyes, it was not a bad thing even if they were forced to join the Ghost King Palace. Even if the little Rakshasa liked the new and hated the old every few days, they were still part of the Ghost King Palace. Be it cultivation resources or servants, they did not lack anything. Their lives were much better than before. They were just unlucky this time. The person that Lord Ghost King kidnapped actually had such a powerful backer. Originally, this senior was a man of martial ethics and did not intend to vent his anger on them. However, they had to provoke him. Bloodblade Venerable Master and the Ghost Cultivator who was severely injured and almost had his soul dissipated were extremely regretful. It's all this junior's fault for being blind. Please forgive me, senior. This junior has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Senior, please forgive me. Li Mu looked at them and said indifferently, "Did you think that I would forgive your offense just because of your words? Please forgive us, senior. Please forgive us, senior." As soon as Li Mu finished speaking, everyone in the hall immediately knelt down. Li Mu waited for a while and gave the 3 sixth realm powerhouses enough psychological pressure before he said slowly, "The heavens are virtuous. I'm not a murderous person. Otherwise, the 3 of you would be dead by now." The 3 immediately bowed. "Thank you, senior, for not killing us." Li Mu said coldly, "Don't be happy too early. Originally, I had no karma with you, but since you provoked me, you have already planted the seeds of evil. Serve under me for 10 years and remove the karma, and I will let you go. Otherwise, I will use an even simpler method to remove the karma." The 3 of them naturally understood what a simpler method meant. When a person died, karma would dissipate. There was no simpler way to remove karma than to silence them. These transcendent old monsters had all seen through some of the principles of heaven and earth, and they placed great importance on karma. They were guests under the Devil King. Betraying the Devil King would definitely infuriate him, and there would be trouble in the future. However, if they did not agree to this, they would be in big trouble now. While the 3 of them were hesitating, Li Mu said leisurely, I have never liked to force others. If you are unwilling to serve under me, I will not force you. The three of them trembled at the same time. This was a blatant threat. Yes, yes. We are willing. We are willing too. Soon, a drop of soul blood and 2 soul essences floated in front of Li Mu. He took them. Seeing the worry in the depths of the three's expressions, he knew what they were afraid of. He said, Don't worry, Rakshasa King won't have the chance to trouble you. He has already formed a karma with me. Sooner or later, I will settle this with him. Li Mu did not intend to subdue the three of them, but now that things had come to this, and he had formed an irreconcilable feud with the Devil King, it would be a waste not to poach them. After all, he was no longer a small disciple of F. Lu's school. As the future schoolmaster, he shouldered the heavy responsibility of the school's rise. Xuanzong was extremely powerful. If F. Lu's school wanted to catch up with Xuanzong and avenge Xiao Bai's family, they still had a long way to go. He would not let go of any opportunity to strengthen the school. Although the Sixth Realm was not enough in his eyes, they were still top-notch powerhouses on the continent and were targets that all major forces wanted to recruit. Since they were already on his side, Li Mu was not stingy. He casually threw 2 pills to the middle-aged man and the severely injured ghost cultivator and said, Take these and heal your injuries. Thank you, Senior. The 2 of them took the pills and knew that they were not ordinary pills just by smelling them. They immediately clasped their fists and thanked him. They had just become someone's slaves, so they were a little conflicted at first. But now, their thoughts were slowly changing. It did not matter who they became. Compared to the Devil King, this senior was more powerful and had the demeanor of a powerhouse. He was also so generous to his subordinates. It might not be a bad thing to work for him. In the cultivation world, strength was respected. It would not be easy for the Devil King to severely injure them. Following such a powerhouse was not a humiliation. Perhaps they could even obtain greater opportunities. Then, Li Mu let the 2 injured people heal their injuries. The other person comforted the Devil King's subordinates and the ghosts of Fengdu. He originally only wanted to rob the Devil King's treasure house, but he was forced to take over his Fengdu. Just take it as punishment for bullying Ali. Li Mu turned to look at her and asked, Are you not angry anymore? Shangguanli lowered her head and said, Thank you. Li Mu waved his hand and said, We're all family. What's there to thank me for? Shangguanli blushed and said, Who's family with you? Li Mu explained, His Majesty and I are family. His Majesty treats you as his younger sister, so you can be considered my sister-in-law. As the saying goes, sister-in-laws. In short, we're family. If anyone dares to bully you, I'll be the first to punish them. Shangguanli was not convinced and said, Who's your younger sister? I'm 3 years older than you. Just as she finished speaking, more than 10 figures rushed in from outside. I was blind and offended you, Senior. Please have mercy on us, Senior. Please spare us. I'm willing to be your slave and serve you for the rest of my life. Little Rakshasa's wives and concubines all knelt on the ground, crying and begging for mercy. It was as if there were thousands of ducks in the hall. Li Mu had a headache from the noise. He waved his hand and said, I don't want to do anything to you. Disperse. More than half of these female ghosts were snatched by little Rakshasa. Li Mu had no enmity with them, so he didn't want to punish them. He just wanted them to leave quickly and stop bothering him. Thank you, Senior, for your mercy. Several female ghosts immediately ran out of the hall after Li Mu spoke, but a few stayed behind. The coquettish female ghost in the lead boldly walked behind Li Mu and massaged his shoulders while saying, Senior, I'll massage your shoulders. The other 2 slightly more beautiful ones knelt on his left and right, one on his right. They put their hands on his legs and said, Senior, we'll massage your legs, aha. Shangguanli's expression was cold as she made a heavy sound. Li Mu's mind moved, and the 3 female ghosts were immediately teleported out. He looked at Shangguanli beside him and said seriously, Ali, as you can see, I'm a good person who doesn't do anything wrong. When you go back, you can't talk nonsense in front of Her Majesty. Shangguanli snorted and said, "That'll depend on your performance in the future." Outside the hall, several female ghosts appeared in a flash. They were all shocked. This senior's strength was indeed unfathomable to teleport them away without a sound. The fifth realm female ghost looked regretful and muttered, "This senior is much more powerful than little Rakshasa. It's a pity that he doesn't get close to women." Chapter 585. Li Mu dismissed the young Rakshasa's wives and concubines and ordered someone to find a more detailed map of the ghost domain. The original map he had only marked the safe routes between the major cities in the ghost domain. There weren't many records of the vast unknown lands, and the location of the fallen god's land wasn't on it either. What the sixth realm ghost cultivator gave Li Mu was the most complete map of the ghost realm that had been discovered so far. Not only was the location of the unknown lands marked on the map, but the danger level was also marked. The land of the fallen gods was also on the map. Li Mu had to go to the fallen god's land this time. Firstly, it was for the heavenly book. Secondly, the Rakshasa king was there too. Li Mu had stolen his home when he wasn't there. If he didn't solve the problem of the Rakshasa king, he would lose the territory that he had fought so hard for when he returned. After arranging everything in Fengdu City, Li Mu and Shangguanli left. Regarding the heavenly book, there was no time to lose. If someone else beat them to it, their trip would be in vain. Just as the two left Fengdu City, in the depths of the South Sea, on an island shrouded in ghost fog, a skeleton-like elder opened his eyes from a tall tower and whispered, "Li Mu has appeared in the ghost domain. He should also be here for the heavenly book. This person has so many heavenly books, maybe he has already discovered the secret of the door." In the stone coffin beside him, the white-clothed woman slowly stood up and said, "Your whereabouts can't be hidden from Tianjizi. If you go out to sea, you will immediately be stopped by him. This time, I will go personally." The skeleton-like elder pondered for a moment and whispered, "Blood River's death is very likely related to him. With your current cultivation, you may not be able to defeat this person." He was silent for a long time. Suddenly, two lines condensed from black fog spread out from his body. The black lines extended into the white-clothed woman's body and connected their bodies. Then, the skeleton-like elder's aura continued to weaken while the white-clothed woman's aura continued to rise from the peak of the sixth realm. After breaking through a certain barrier, it returned to calmness. The black line of mist disappeared, and the old man said slowly, "This way, there will be no mistakes." He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "We must obtain the Ghost Path Heavenly Book. That page is different from the others. It has another great use. We must not let it fall into the hands of the righteous." Not long after, a white light flew out from the South Sea Ghost Island and headed towards the coast. Wherever the white light passed, the seawater boiled and evaporated, and countless corpses floated on the surface of the sea. Ghost Domain. Shangguanli was slowly moving forward in a fog-shrouded area. Suddenly, countless black cracks appeared in the space around her. Shangguanli's expression changed. She used her magic power to prop up a shield to protect herself, but she still couldn't stop the cracks from spreading. It was as if they would swallow her up in the next moment. At this moment, a figure teleported to her side and grabbed her waist. In the next moment, the two figures disappeared. The black crack spread to the previous location and quickly dissipated. Not far ahead, Li Mu and Shangguanli stumbled and fell out of the space. Li Mu's face was pale. After a day, he finally understood why the unknown places were so terrifying. The space here was extremely unstable. It was so unstable that even if someone passed by, the space would collapse. The power of spatial collapse was extremely terrifying. No matter how strong one's physical body was, they would be instantly torn apart by the spatial turbulence. Only their primordial spirit would be left behind. Li Mu removed his hand from Shangguanli's waist and shook his head. "We can't go on like this. Every time we move forward, we are taking a risk. If we are not careful, it will be too late to regret." He and Shangguanli had already encountered spatial collapse more than a dozen times in a day. Although they narrowly survived each time, Li Mu couldn't let Shangguanli take the risk every time. If something happened to her, how could he face the Empress? He thought for a moment and suddenly had an idea. He had almost forgotten something. Li Mu sent a figure out of the flask space. It was little Rakshasa. As soon as the little Rakshasa was released, she immediately yelled at the top of her lungs, "I don't care who you are. You better let me go immediately. My father is the Rakshasa king, a seventh realm dark ghost. When my father returns, you will all die without a burial ground." Before he could finish his words, he saw a black spatial crack not far in front of him that was growing bigger and bigger. His face changed drastically, and he shouted, "Crazy, you're all crazy. Do you know where this is? This is the unknown place, and even my father doesn't dare to trespass. Are you tired of living?" Li Mu pointed at him and said indifferently, "You, scout ahead." Little Rakshasa was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he immediately said angrily, "What? You dare ask me to scout ahead for you? Don't even think about it. Even if I, little Rakshasa, die here, I will not help you do such a thing." Li Mu looked at him with a faint smile on his face. "Oh, is that so?" he asked. 15 minutes later. Li Mu and Shangguanli walked leisurely in the fog, following little Rakshasa's path. Little Rakshasa's aura was weak, and his face was pale as he walked in front, muttering to himself. "Bastard couple, how dare you ask me to scout ahead for you? You even pretended to be a bride to trick me. You guys don't do anything related to humans at all. Bah, bastard couple." Li Mu looked at little Rakshasa and asked, "What are you muttering about?" "And nothing." A smile appeared on little Rakshasa's face immediately. "Brother, I didn't know that I had offended the two of you. Can you let me off? When I return to Fengdu, I will prepare a generous gift for you as an apology. My father is the master of Fengdu and there are countless treasures in his treasury," Li Mu said. "Are you talking about that 3-story palace? I've already emptied everything in there." Little Rakshasa was stunned and said in shock, What? Li Mu looked at him and said indifferently, "Otherwise, where do you think the spirit jades, soul energy, and elixirs you saw in my cave abode came from?" After little Rakshasa came back to his senses, his heart was bleeding. Those were all his treasures. After his father's lifespan ended and he died, the entire Fengdu was his. This damned man took the treasures that were supposed to belong to him. Soon, he realized that now was not the time to feel sorry for these things. His life was the most important. He pretended not to care and said, "I still have dozens of wives and concubines. All of them are as beautiful as flowers and can be used as good cultivation furnaces. If brother wants, I can give them all to you," Li Mu said calmly. "I've already dismissed all your wives and concubines." Little Rakshasa was stunned again. His wives and concubines, so many of his wives and concubines, were dismissed? Why? His treasures were stolen and his wives and concubines were dismissed. What exactly happened in Fengdu while he was trapped? At this time, Li Mu said again, "Stop talking nonsense and continue scouting. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Thinking about what happened just now, little Rakshasa's body trembled. He could only continue flying forward. He was no match for this adulterous couple. If he didn't do as they said, he would probably die here. However, this place was full of threats. If he wasn't careful, he still couldn't avoid the fate of death. Just as he was feeling sorrowful and helpless, he suddenly felt an extremely strong suction force in front of him. A black crack rapidly expanded in front of his eyes. Little Rakshasa activated all his magic power, but he still couldn't avoid flying in that direction. "My life is over." Just as little Rakshasa had this thought, an illusory palm suddenly condensed in the void. Before he could touch the spatial crack, it scooped his soul out. Li Mu clapped his hands and said, "Change direction and continue." The divine abilities of the dragon race were indeed extraordinary. Under the chaotic power of space, many divine abilities couldn't be used. However, fishing the moon in the water, that he learned from the dragon race's heavenly book wasn't affected. At this time, an aura suddenly approached from behind. A transparent soul came from behind and pounced at Shangguanli. This soul's strength was extremely terrifying. It emitted a 6th-level aura. When it was only a few feet away from Shangguanli, Li Mu softly said a word. Freeze. The soul's body froze in the air for a moment. Then, it was pierced by an illusory sword. The soul became more and more transparent. Then, a spear burst out and pierced its body. The soul's body was already extremely transparent. In the end, it collapsed under countless purple lightning bolts and turned into pure soul power, which was collected by Li Mu. There were 2 dangers in the unknown lands of the ghost realm. The first was the space that could collapse at any time. The second was these wandering souls. Outside the unknown lands, most of the wandering souls encountered were of the lower 3 realms. 4th and 5th level were rare. However, within the unknown lands, 5th-level ghosts could be seen everywhere. 6th-level essence souls also appeared frequently. Although Dongxuan's experts could defeat essence soul realm wandering souls, they still had to wait for a while. If several essence souls swarmed together, Dongxuan's cultivation was also at risk of dying. Little Rakshasa saw Li Mu kill an essence soul with the same cultivation as him as if he was killing a chicken. His throat moved. When he saw Li Mu looking at him, he immediately said, "I'll continue to explore," while little Rakshasa was filled with anger and helplessness, he continued to explore. The long silence in the unknown lands of the ghost realm was broken. Somewhere in the fog, Ming-Yi led close to 100 figures forward. At the front, a vengeful spirit was slowly moving. Suddenly, the space was filled with spiderweb-like cracks. This vengeful spirit did not even have time to scream before he was swallowed. The Hall of Souls group slowed down. Ming-Yi casually pointed at a soul in front and said, "You, go up." That vengeful spirit trembled. He did not dare to disobey the elder's order and carefully moved forward. After 15 minutes, he screamed again and was swallowed into a spatial crack. Ming-Yi's expression was calm as he continued. Next, in another part of the fog, a 6th-realm wandering soul was madly struggling in Devil King's hand. He clenched his fist, and this wandering soul collapsed into soul power and was absorbed into his body. Devil King closed his eyes. A moment later, he slowly opened them. He held a compass in his hand and slowly moved forward in the fog. Suddenly, a white light flashed on the compass. The needle noticed that it had deviated. Devil King adjusted his direction and continued to move forward according to the needle. The space where he was originally going to pass slowly cracked open. 100 miles to his left, a woman in white was rapidly flying through the air. Even a 7th-realm cultivator would be shocked by this scene. The unknown lands were filled with spatial cracks. If one was not careful, one's body would be torn to pieces by the chaotic power of space. No one dared to travel in the unknown lands at such a speed. Wherever the woman in white passed, there were many spatial cracks. But strangely, she passed through these areas recklessly without any injuries. She was approaching the center of the ghost realm at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, there were countless figures in the ghost realm. They were all moving toward the same destination. At the center of the ghost realm, there was a fog vortex that was hundreds of miles wide that was slowly spinning. Chapter 586. Ghost Domain. Li Mu and Shangguanli walked along the map. After walking for thousands of miles, the fog in front of them finally began to thin. Logically speaking, as they went deeper into the ghost domain, the fog should get thicker and thicker, and the obstruction to spiritual sense would become stronger. However, when the fog reached a certain level, the closer they got to the land of the fallen gods marked on the map, the thinner the fog became. After walking for another 100 miles, Li Mu finally knew the reason. A huge fog whirlpool that stretched as far as the eye could see was slowly rotating. The nearby fog was attracted by it and was sucked into the whirlpool. This caused the fog that formed the whirlpool to be so thick that it could not dissipate. Outside the whirlpool, there was a normal area without fog. Inside the whirlpool was the land of the fallen gods. At this moment, in front of the land of the fallen gods, in an empty valley, countless figures were waiting silently. Before Li Mu left Fengdu, he had already understood the ins and outs of the heavenly book in detail. A few days ago, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared in a mountain in the ghost domain, attracting countless ghost cultivators to check it out. In the end, a page flew out from the mountain. Although many people did not know what it was undoubtedly a treasure. In order to fight for this item, a chaotic battle broke out. The page eventually fell into the hands of a ghost cultivator. It was originally an ordinary treasure hunt. If he did not get the treasure, he could only blame himself for not being as skilled as others. However, when the news spread and someone pointed out that the page was the mysterious page of the heavenly book, the various major forces in the ghost domain could not sit still. Very few people in the cultivation world did not know how important the heavenly book was. With a page of the heavenly book, one could establish a sect. It could be said to be the most precious treasure in the cultivation world. Hundreds of years ago, after the Ghost Dao heavenly book disappeared in the ghost domain, it had never appeared again. This time, it was very likely that the page of the heavenly book had appeared. When the news of the heavenly book spread, the ordinary ghosts in the ghost domain did not know what had happened. However, the major forces behind the ghost domain sent out countless experts to hunt down the ghost cultivator who had obtained the heavenly book. That ghost cultivator naturally could not withstand the pursuit of the entire ghost domain by himself. In the process of escaping, he was forced into a dead end. Then, he took the heavenly book and resolutely entered the land of the fallen gods. The land of the fallen gods was one of the most dangerous regions in the ghost domain. The space there was extremely chaotic, and it was easy to enter but difficult to leave. Even seventh realms did not dare to go near it easily. Naturally, it also blocked the pursuers. However, the temptation of the heavenly tomes eventually overcame the humans' fear of danger. This time, many forces of the ghost realm had gathered here and taken the risk to enter the fallen god land for the sake of that one page of the heavenly book. Li Mu was extremely far away, but he could also feel the chaotic power of space ahead of him. Their safe journey here was all thanks to the little Rakshasa's selfless dedication and sacrifice. After almost being sucked into the spatial rifts dozens of times, his cultivation had already fallen from the 6th realm to the 4th realm. In the end, even Li Mu himself felt that this was not something a human would do, so he took the initiative to let him go, allowing him to fall into a deep slumber in the Demon Emperor's abode. Li Mu looked at the huge fog whirlpool and slowly heaved a sigh of relief. They would probably have to wait a few more days to enter the land of the fallen gods. Although the land of the fallen gods was dangerous, it was not without a pattern. Every half a year, the fog tide here would enter a low tide for a month. Entering the land of the fallen gods at this time was the least dangerous. Li Mu's current location was in the vicinity of the land of the fallen gods. The fog tide was the calmest, and it was also one of the safest entrances to this place. Therefore, many people had gathered here before they arrived. In order to prevent their identities from being exposed, both of them used a secret technique to change their appearances. Li Mu and Shangguanli walked out of the fog and into the valley, which attracted the attention of all the forces present. Everyone who could come here had some ability. There was only one page of the heavenly book, but there were countless people who wanted it. Therefore, everyone here was their competitor. While these people were sizing up Li Mu was also sizing them up. From the area that these people occupied, there were at least 7 or 8 forces that came here before them. They had more people, but each force had at least one 6th realm ghost. Li Mu glanced around. Apart from him and Shangguanli, there were as many as 11 6th realm ghost cultivators here. This was only one entrance. There were other entrances to the land of the fallen gods. There were many more powerful people in the ghost domain than Li Mu imagined. It was no wonder that the central dynasty did not dare to let down their guard against the ghost domain for so many years. This place was filled with Yin Qi and was too suitable for ghost cultivators to cultivate. They did not have to go out of their way to obtain cultivation resources. They just floated in the air. It was not an exaggeration to say that this place was a sacred place for cultivation. Li Mu and Shangguanli found an empty space and waited quietly. Because of the appearance of the two of them, the surrounding ghost cultivators had already caused a small round of discussion. News of the heavenly book spread really fast. Even humans are here. 2 humans want to get their hands on the ghost domain's heavenly book. The 2 of them must not be good people to be able to come here. It will be even harder for us to get the heavenly book. Although there was only 1 page of the heavenly book, there would be a battle between them sooner or later. However, this was the ghost domain's own business and had nothing to do with the humans outside. Looking at the 2 unfamiliar humans, a cold glint flashed across the eyes of a powerful ghost cultivator. He transmitted his voice to the other person beside him. The ghost domain's heavenly book cannot be given to humans. These 2 humans are big trouble. Instead of entering the land of the fallen gods and fighting with them, why don't we join forces now and get rid of these 2 first? The 2 of them exchanged glances. The other ghost cultivator hesitated for a moment, then nodded lightly and walked toward the other ghost cultivator not far away. Li Mu looked at the huge swirling fog vortex for a while and felt a little bored. He looked at Shangwanli beside him and realized that she was in a daze. For the past 2 days, she had been absent-minded for no reason. Li Mu wanted to have a casual chat with her, but a smile suddenly appeared on his face. Li Mu suddenly said, "Ali." Shangwanli turned her head abruptly. "What?" Li Mu stretched out his hand, and a long golden whip appeared in his hand. He handed the long whip to Shangwanli. Shanghai Li saw 4 ghost figures slowly approaching them from the corner of her eye. She silently took the long whip from Li Mu. The 4 sixth realm ghost cultivators approached Li Mu and Shangwanli from behind without any concealment. In front of them was a huge fog vortex. At this moment, the power of space was extremely chaotic. If they entered, they would most likely die. Behind them, they were surrounded by 4 ghost cultivators and would find it difficult to break through. The rest of the ghost cultivators here temporarily shifted their attention to this place. They did not participate. Instead, they looked like they were watching a show. It was as if they could already see the ending of this human couple. The 4 ghost cultivators approached Li Mu and Shangwanli to a certain distance. They looked at each other and suddenly burst forth. 4 rays of sorcery light attacked Li Mu and Shangwanli from behind. However, in the next moment, an illusory small sword appeared in front of the 4 sixth realm ghost cultivators at the same time. This sword appeared abruptly and was extremely fast. It locked onto them at the first moment. There was no way to dodge or avoid it. The small sword pierced through their foreheads. The 4 ghost cultivators' souls were severely injured in an instant. They were shocked. Before they could make any preparations, another ray of golden light attacked from the front. Swoosh! Within the golden light was the shadow of a whip. It arrived in an instant and whipped them. The 4 ghost cultivators, who were already severely injured, dimmed again. They were even on the verge of collapse. At this moment, another 4 golden hoops descended from the sky and looped around their necks. After being bound by the golden hoops, their cultivation was also sealed. They were tied together by a rope and instantly lost the ability to resist. The entire valley was deathly silent. The 4 sixth realm ghost cultivators were the first to launch a sneak attack. They were actually captured by the 2 people in an instant. The 2 people's cultivation was not much different from theirs. However, their coordination was too good. Their Dharma treasures and Abhijna were also specialized in suppressing souls. Especially that illusory small sword, it made all the ghost cultivators present tremble in fear. The scene just now happened too quickly. The ending was too shocking. Some of the ghost cultivators subconsciously shifted their gazes away. They no longer dared to have any ideas about the 2 people. Li Mu casually kept the 4 ghosts in the Demon Emperor's cave abode. He would slowly train them when he had the time. The subordinates that the 4 ghost cultivators brought along stood in a daze. They were fine when they arrived. They followed the Ghost King and narrowly avoided countless dangers. Now that the Ghost King was captured, how were they going to return? A few 5th realm ghost cultivators from the 4 forces gathered their courage and walked in front of Li Mu. They knelt on one knee and cupped their fists. "Greetings, Master." "Greetings, Madam." Li Mu glanced at them and asked, "What are you doing?" A ghost cultivator at the peak of the 5th realm braced himself and said, We used to follow the Ghost King. You defeated the Ghost King and are our new master. Li Mu glanced at them. He quickly understood why these ghost cultivators were so anxious to acknowledge him as their master. Without the sixth realm cultivators, they were in the unknown lands. They could not return from here to any city in the ghost domain. They had to pass through countless chaotic spaces and encounter countless powerful wandering souls. With their cultivation, it was impossible for them to pass through. Li Mu looked at them and said, "That's enough. Stand aside." If he left them alone, not many of them would be able to return alive. Their souls would be scattered here. The forces under any one of these four ghost cultivators were comparable to a small or medium-sized sect. After being incorporated, they would be a considerable force. Hearing Li Mu's words, the few fifth realm ghost cultivators heaved a sigh of relief. They finally relaxed and called their subordinates to gather together. In an instant, the largest force behind Li Mu actually formed in this valley. At least in terms of numbers, it was enough to look down on everyone. The fog vortex in the fallen god's land was still spinning, but Li Mu could clearly feel that the vortex was gradually slowing down. When the vortex slowed down to its maximum speed, it would be the best time for them to enter the fallen god's land. Time passed slowly as they waited like this. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 days, some forces from the ghost domain came one after another. However, most of them were led by fifth realm ghost cultivators. Even if they were not at the sixth realm, they were at the peak of the fifth realm. The chances of ordinary fifth realm ghost cultivators coming here safely were very small. Of course, Li Mu could not keep standing for 3 days. He moved out a stone table, stone chairs, and a small pavilion from his cave abode. He sat in the pavilion and drank tea and played chess with Shangguan Li. However, Li Mu's chess skills were obviously not as good as Shangguan Li's. If she had not been deliberately giving in to Li Mu would probably have been defeated by her in every game. Li Mu held a chess piece in his hand. At a certain moment, he looked at the fog in the distance. Very quickly, a middle-aged man walked out of the fog. The middle-aged man wore a black robe embroidered with dragons and a pearl and jade crown on his head. He looked like an emperor. Behind him were a group of ghosts. There were 2 sixth realm ghost cultivators and more than 10 fifth realm ghost cultivators. Wherever these people went, the ghosts retreated and took the initiative to give up the most central position in the valley. Behind Li Mu, a fifth realm ghost cultivator exclaimed, "It's Lord King Yama." Lord King Yama actually came personally. Li Mu's gaze swept across the black-robed man. On the surface, there were 4 seventh realm ghost kings in the ghost domain. They were the Rakshasa King, the Yiksha King, the Azura King, and the King Yama King. Even 7th realm experts could not resist the attraction of the heavenly book. Among the 4 ghost kings, Li Mu already knew that 2 of them had come here. The Rakshasa King left Fengdu before him, but Li Mu did not see him. He must have chosen another entrance. Along the way, they had to avoid the random spatial rifts that appeared. Even if they set off from the same place, the routes they took in the end would be very different. Not long after the King Yama King and the others arrived, the fog somewhere rolled, and countless figures walked out. Li Mu tilted his head to take a look, and his gaze stopped on a figure. It was an elder who was also wearing a long robe with a black lotus embroidered on his chest. He was one of the 3 elders of Yu and Ming who blocked Li Mu's path last time. Behind Li Mu, a voice exclaimed, "The people of the Hall of Souls are also here." Xie Yi had just walked out of the fog when he suddenly felt something and looked towards a certain direction. In a pavilion in front of the fog vortex, a young man's gaze met his briefly before he looked away. Xie Yi looked at him again and remembered this person in his heart. This person gave him a very strange feeling, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, after searching his memories for a long time, he could not find this person's figure in his memories. Chapter 587. When Gue Yi first arrived with the Soul Hall people, he immediately observed the strength of the cultivators present. The one wearing a black dragon robe and followed by a Realm 6 ghost cultivator was one of the 4 ghost kings, King Yama. This old ghost's cultivation was considered powerful among the Realm 7, so he had to be careful. The second person he had to be careful of was the somewhat familiar youth. Although Gue could not see anything, his intuition told him that this person was not to be trifled with. Of course, he was only wary of these people and did not fear them. Nightmare 2 and Nightmare 3 had other missions and were not by his side. However, before he entered the ghost realm, he knew that the Lord Fifth Ancestor would come personally this time. As long as the Lord Fifth Ancestor came personally, wouldn't the land of the fallen gods be their backyard? In the pavilion, Li Mu drank a cup of tea. His expression was calm, but he was thinking about something. The three elders of the Yuming sect had once said that the demon Dao had the means to extend the lifespan of cultivators. He had been thinking about this for a long time. The two grand elders were nearing the end of their lifespans. If he could extend their lifespans by 60 years, it would be of great significance to the sect. This time, if he had the chance, he had to capture Gue and ask him about the method to extend his lifespan. Gue, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly sensed something and opened his eyes. He looked in a certain direction and saw that the youth who made him wary was looking at him. For some reason, when he met this person's gaze, he actually panicked for no reason. While everyone waited, another 2 days passed. At this moment, the fog whirlpool in the land of the fallen gods was spinning at an extremely slow speed. It looked like it was still. At a certain moment, King Yama, who was at the front of the valley, suddenly stepped into the fog whirlpool with his subordinates and quickly disappeared. King Yama was familiar with the ghost realm. His actions meant that the time to enter the land of the fallen gods had arrived. The second to enter the land of the fallen gods was the Soul Hall. Before they entered the whirlpool, no one dared to make a move. After the two factions entered the whirlpool for 15 minutes, the other factions entered one after another. Li Mu looked at Shangguanli and said, "Why don't you wait for me outside?" The name Land of the Fallen Gods didn't come out of nowhere. Countless experts had fallen there, which gave it the name Fallen Gods. Li Mu didn't really want her to risk her life. Shangguanli looked at him indifferently and asked, "Are you afraid that I'll drag you down?" Li Mu immediately shook his head. Of course not. She wasn't just a pretty face. No matter where she went, her 6th level strength couldn't be underestimated. With the tacit cooperation between her and Li Mu, they could instantly take down ghostly cultivators of the same level. Seeing that her attitude was firm, Li Mu also let her be. He turned around and said to the ghost cultivators behind him, "You don't have to go in. Just wait here." In the unknown place of the ghost realm, the only use of these low-level ghost cultivators was to scout the way. When it came to fighting the enemy, they wouldn't be of any help at all. Li Mu simply didn't let them go in to die. The ghost cultivators were stunned on the spot. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. The Ghost King brought them here so that they could risk their lives and find a safe way out. Along the way, they had already lost many people. They thought that since they had no choice but to acknowledge a new master, most of them would probably die in the land of the fallen gods. They didn't expect that their new master had no intention of letting them in at all. A 5th-level ghost cultivator said in disbelief, "Master, are you saying that we don't have to go in?" Li Mu looked at him and asked, "What are you going in for with your cultivation? To die?" A ghost's life was also a life. A 5th-level ghost cultivator's strength was already equivalent to an elder of a peak. It was not easy to nurture an elder. How could Li Mu let them die for nothing? After saying that, Li Mu no longer cared about them. He entered the fog vortex side by side with Shangguanli. As for whether these ghost cultivators would run away, he wasn't worried at all. In their current situation, they would die if they took a step forward, and they would also die if they took a step back. The only way to survive was to obediently wait in place. As they watched them disappear into the vortex, the remaining ghost cultivators were all overjoyed. If they were still the subordinates of the previous Ghost King, they would definitely enter this place with him. They thought that they had just escaped the tiger's den and entered the wolf's den. They didn't expect this new master to be so benevolent and actually spare a thought for their ghost lives. If they could follow such a master, wouldn't their lives be much better than before? At this moment, hundreds of ghost cultivators were silently praying in their hearts, hoping that their master would return safely. Compared to them, the low-level ghost cultivators of the other factions were not so lucky. They looked at the ghosts who had set up camp here with incomparable envy and jealousy. They helplessly followed the powerful figure in the lead and stepped into the fog vortex. From then on, their ghost lives were unknown, land of the fallen gods. King Yenluo and the others were trapped in a valley. Facing the endless waves of fearless wandering souls, even the 7th-level King Yenluo's face was very gloomy. The wandering souls in the land of the fallen gods were much stronger than outside. Among these hundreds of wandering souls, there were 5 that were close to the 6th level. If they were attacked by them, their side would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Helpless, he could only prop up a dermic power shield and forcibly block the wandering soul's attacks. 20 miles to their left, Feng Yi was controlling a black lotus and fighting with a 7th-level wandering soul. Although he had suppressed the wandering soul without self-awareness from the beginning, he didn't relax at all. This land of the fallen gods even had 7th-level wandering souls. The difficulty of finding the heavenly book was much greater than he had imagined. At the same time, in another part of the vortex, several soul shadows let out mournful howls and pounced from the fog. However, they were pierced by a small transparent sword. Then, a golden whip flashed past, and these soul shadows collapsed into soul power, which was collected by Li Mu in a soul bottle. In the land of the fallen gods, the number of wandering souls increased explosively. Often, 5th-level wandering souls attacked in groups. Li Mu didn't waste any soul power and collected every soul he saw. Soul power could be used directly for cultivation to help cultivators condense their souls and strengthen their essence spirits. It could also be sold for spiritual jades. These ferocious-looking souls were gifts from nature. Working together with Shangguanli, they harvested these wandering souls like harvesting chives. Not only was Li Mu not afraid, but he also hoped that there would be more wandering souls. As soon as he had this thought, the fog to one side suddenly surged rapidly. Countless wandering souls flew out of the fog and surged towards Li Mu and Shangguanli. Li Mu could sense no less than 5 6th-level auras in this wave of souls. He didn't know how many 5th-level wandering souls there were. It was impossible to kill them all. He and Shangguanli couldn't kill them all in a short amount of time. Once they attracted even more souls, they would be trapped here until they died. The power of space in the land of the fallen gods was extremely chaotic. It was best not to enter the demon emperor's dwelling, or they might appear directly above a spatial crack when they came out. In a moment of desperation, Li Mu recited the Heart Sutra. His body emitted a blinding golden light. When the golden light appeared, the soul wave that was charging towards them suddenly stopped. These wandering souls actually had looks of disgust on their faces. They avoided Li Mu and turned to charge towards Shangguanli. Li Mu held Shangguanli's waist. The Buddhist light completely covered their bodies. The wandering souls circled around them and didn't continue to attack. They didn't seem to want to get close to the Buddhist light of the Heart Sutra, but they didn't want to leave either. Shangguanli lowered her head and looked at Li Mu's hand on her waist. Li Mu immediately let go and explained, "I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." When his hand left Shangguanli, the golden light on Shanghai Li's body dissipated. The wandering souls rushed towards her again. Li Mu immediately put his hand back. At the same time, he shrugged and said, "You saw it. It's a special time. Don't care about these things. Why don't you give me your hand?" Shangguanli blushed slightly. She nodded and said, Let's use our hand." Li Mu let go of her waist and turned to hold her hand. This way, the Buddhist light of the Heart Sutra could be transmitted into her body. The problem of the wandering souls was temporarily solved. The question now was, where was the page of the heavenly book? The ghost cultivator with the heavenly book had fled here because he was being chased by the ghost realm. It was very likely that he had already died. The land of the fallen gods was huge. If they searched blindly like this, they didn't know when they would find it. Suddenly, Li Mu thought of something. He stretched out his hand and a page of the heavenly book appeared in his palm. With this page of the heavenly book in his hand, Li Mu immediately sensed something in his heart. In the depths of the land of the fallen gods, something was attracting him. Li Mu was delighted. Just as he was about to continue moving in that direction, his footsteps suddenly stopped. This was because there was also a kind of attraction coming from another direction. In close proximity, the pages of the heavenly book would sense each other. This meant that there was also a page of the heavenly book in that direction. Could it be that there were two pages of the heavenly book in the land of the fallen gods? Just as Li Mu took out the heavenly book, in another part of the land of the fallen gods, a woman in white raised her head. A smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She said softly, "You finally took it out." She took a step towards Li Mu's direction and suddenly stopped. She said indifferently, "Get out here." Not long after her voice fell, the fog behind her tumbled. A middle-aged man walked out. The middle-aged man stared at the page floating in her hand. His throat moved, and he said in shock, "The heavenly book. You actually already have the heavenly book." The next moment, the shock in his eyes turned into greed. The middle-aged man formed a seal with both hands. Endless chi surged out of his body, forming one soul shadow after another around him. Each soul shadow exuded the aura of a sixth realm cultivator. As soon as the soul shadows formed, they attacked the woman in white. The woman in white stood where she was and did not move. She only took a light breath. The soul shadows that flew towards her immediately collapsed and were inhaled by her nose. The woman stuck out her tongue and licked her red lips. She looked at him with a deep gaze and asked, "Do you have more?" This scene caused the Rakshasa king's expression to change drastically. He immediately retreated a distance and said in shock, "Who exactly are you?" The woman in white's expression was cold. Her figure gradually faded. At this moment, the Rakshasa king felt a strong sense of danger. His body turned into a cloud of black fog and spread in all directions. 10 cold lights appeared where he was originally standing. At the edge of the black fog, the Rakshasa king's body condensed again. However, there were a few more scratch marks on his chest. After a short exchange, he knew that he was definitely not this woman's match. He did not dare to look at her again and quickly fled into the depths of the fog. The woman in white did not chase him. She only glanced indifferently in the direction he fled. Then, she rushed in another direction. At the end of the direction she was heading, Li Mu held the heavenly book in his hand. He was filled with doubts. How could there be two heavenly books here? Could he have sensed wrongly? Soon, he sensed one of the two senses from the heavenly book again. One was still, but the other was moving. Moreover, it was approaching him at an unbelievable speed. Before Li Mu could think further, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. This feeling made his hair stand on end. It was as if a great disaster was about to befall him. Li Mu did not hesitate to put the heavenly book away. His expression turned serious as he muttered, "What's going on?" Chapter 588. After cultivating to the Dongxian realm, one's 7 spirits and primordial spirit were extremely powerful. Any premonition or intuition was not groundless. Li Mu had not felt such a sense of danger for a long time. He pinched his fingers and divined, but he did not see anything. At the Dongxian realm, one could make preliminary predictions. Although he might not be able to predict anything, he could still sense something. If he did not sense anything, it was either that the other party could hide from the heavens, or that the other party was too powerful. The art of divination could not determine the strength of the other party. Unless he had cultivated this Tao to the point of perfection and reached the pinnacle of perfection. Unfortunately, divination was a supernatural power. The best divination art was in Xuanzong. Among the 6 Taoism heavenly books, Li Mu did not have Xuanzong's heavenly book. The heavenly books could sense each other. He could sense the other party, and the other party could sense him. After the owner of the heavenly book sensed Li Mu, he quickly approached him. Combined with the creepy feeling, Li Mu decisively kept the heavenly book. Although he was also thinking about the other party's heavenly book, acting rashly when he did not know anything was undoubtedly the most irrational choice. Li Mu thought for a while and said to Shengguanli, "Let's change direction." When he took out the heavenly book, he also sensed a response from the depths of the fallen god's land. The page of the Ghost Dao Heavenly Book must be there. He did not know about the other page of the Heavenly Book for the time being. He planned to get the other page first. Just as Li Mu put away the Heavenly Book, the white-clothed woman who was moving swiftly in the fog suddenly stopped. She held the Heavenly Book in her hand, but she could only sense the existence in the depths of the fallen god's land. The lady kept the Heavenly Book and said, "You're vigilant." She did not continue to pursue in the same direction as before. Instead, she changed directions and headed deeper into the land of the fallen gods. Her speed was very fast and she was not afraid of the spatial cracks at all. Even the wandering souls without intelligence seemed to be very afraid of her and did not dare to approach her. The woman in white continued to fly deeper into the land of the fallen gods. At a certain moment, her flying figure suddenly stopped. Below her was a tall mountain with rugged rocks. There were many caves on the mountain, and countless wandering souls flew in and out of the caves. This mountain was obviously a wandering soul nest. The Qi in this mountain was very dense, which seemed to be the reason why the wandering souls had built their nests here. The woman in white looked at the mountain, and some emotions appeared in her usually cold and emotionless gaze. Nostalgia and memories appeared on her face, and when she looked at the mountain, they turned into hatred. She landed on the mountain, and the wandering souls fled in all directions. All the plants on the mountain withered in an instant. Not long after, the mountain began to rumble, and the entire mountain finally collapsed. In another direction, Li Mu and Shangguanli were floating in the air above a mountain. They looked down and instantly felt their scalps go numb. The fog in the land of the fallen gods was too dense, and one's divine senses and eyes could not see too far. They had actually unintentionally entered the nest of the wandering souls. For some reason, the Qi in this mountain was very dense. The wandering souls had built their nests here. Although they did not have consciousness, they could instinctively use the Qi to cultivate. Fortunately, Li Mu was protected by the Buddha's light. Otherwise, if these wandering souls swarmed over, not to mention him and Shangguanli, even if they had the Empress, they would still be trapped here by these ghostly things. Although the appearance of the two uninvited guests quickly alerted many wandering souls, the two of them held their hands tightly, and their bodies were wrapped in a ball of light. The wandering souls flew over, and before they could get close, they left at their fastest speed. Li Mu could even see the strong disgust and disdain on their faces. Looking at the overwhelming army of wandering souls, Shangguanli's face was a little pale. She said, "Let's get out of here quickly." Li Mu nodded. Just as he was about to quickly fly past this place with her, his eyes inadvertently glanced over, and he suddenly stopped. Li Mu felt that the mountain under his feet was extremely dense with Qi. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that it was strange. He stared at the mountain and asked in a low voice, "Ali, don't you feel that this mountain is a little strange?" Shangguanli glanced down. The dense crowd of wandering souls made her very uncomfortable. She immediately looked away and asked, "Isn't it just a mountain? What's so strange about it?" Li Mu carefully observed the mountain and muttered, "Look over there. Doesn't it look like a skull? Over there is the body, and over there is the tail. The two low hills on both sides look like wings." As Li Mu spoke, his voice gradually became softer. He finally realized what was strange about this mountain. The shape of this mountain was like a giant beast. It was exactly the same as a giant beast that Li Mu had seen in the tomes of heaven of various sections. That giant beast also had a pair of wings on its back and a long tail. In the picture recorded in the tomes of heaven, this beast could spit out flames from its mouth. Not only could the flames melt metal and stone, it could also melt cultivators' magic treasures and even supernatural powers. In the tomes of heaven, countless ancient cultivators had died in its hands. Li Mu flew closer. After circling around the mountain, he finally confirmed that this was not a small mountain, but the corpse of a giant beast. However, after an unknown number of years, this giant beast's corpse was almost petrified. It emitted a strong Qi, which attracted so many wandering souls to build a nest. Shangguanli saw Li Mu's strange expression and asked, "What's wrong?" Li Mu did not explain too much and continued to fly forward with her. Not long after, they found another nest of wandering souls. This was also a continuous mountain range. This time, without waiting for Li Mu to ask, Shangwanli, who was looking down from above, had already discovered something. She muttered, This is a dragon's corpse. If one looked down, this was just a long and narrow mountain range. However, if one looked down from above, this was clearly a giant dragon's corpse. The two peaks that pierced into the fog were two dragon horns. The small hills on the top of the mountain were the dragon scales. In the tomes of heaven of the dragon race, it was the dragon race and the giant beasts that wreaked havoc in the human world. Li Mu did not stop. He even temporarily forgot about the tomes of heaven and searched around with Shangwanli. As they went deeper into the land of the fallen gods, there were more wandering souls in the surroundings. There were also more towering mountains like this. In the eyes of others, this might just be a mountain range. However, in Li Mu's eyes, each mountain range, big and small, was a giant beast that had fallen. Li Mu could find the corresponding giant beast from the tomes of heaven for each mountain range. Their corpses turned into mountains, and the Qi that gushed out of their bodies permeated the entire ghost realm, making this place a holy land suitable for ghost cultivators to cultivate. Although this place was called the Land of the Fallen Gods, it seemed more appropriate to call it the Giant Beast Cemetery. It was not difficult for Li Mu to guess that the location of the ghost realm was an ancient battlefield where ancient cultivators and giant beasts fought. Both sides were the most powerful creatures in the world, and the power of their magical powers was not comparable to that of the present. Not only did the battle cause the fall of countless cultivators and giant beasts, but it even caused the space to collapse. Ordinary space cracks could be repaired by themselves. 10,000 years had passed, and the space here was still unstable. Li Mu could no longer imagine how fierce the battle was 10,000 years ago. If such a powerful giant beast existed in the present world, the human race and other races would not have been born. Including Li Mu, everyone on the continent of the 10 continents was enjoying the shadow of their predecessors. Seeing the giant beast's corpse in the ghost realm finally verified the scene that Li Mu saw in the tomes of heaven a long time ago. If the giant beast was real, then the door was probably real as well. As long as he could find all the tomes of heaven, he would be able to solve the mystery of this ancient mystery. Li Mu sorted out his thoughts and emotions, and continued to move deeper into the land of the fallen gods. Along the way, they avoided the mountain ranges where the wandering souls gathered and did not meet anyone else. At a certain moment, Li Mu and Shangwanli were passing by a mountain peak when they sensed waves of magic power coming from below. It should be the forces of the ghost realm that entered the land of the fallen gods and were besieged by the wandering souls. Li Mu was too lazy to care about these matters, but when he was about to leave, he suddenly stopped. From the fog below, he sensed two familiar auras. Chapter 589. In a mountain range somewhere in the land of the fallen gods, dozens of wandering souls were attacking two women. They were both ghost cultivators. One was dressed in green and the other in green. They were both at the fifth realm and were struggling to fend off the waves of wandering souls. Some of the wandering souls were at the fifth realm while the rest were at the fourth and third realms. The two women were barely able to fend them off. However, there were more and more wandering souls flying out from the mountain range. Soon, they were defeated and surrounded by countless wandering souls. The female ghost in green sighed, Sister Lin, it seems like we're really going to die here. The female ghost in green pushed back a few wandering souls and said, We've already died once. At most, we'll die again. Are you afraid of death? The female ghost in green shook her head and said, I'm not afraid of death, but I don't want to die now. I haven't repaid my benefactor. The female ghost in green looked at her and said, I'll do everything I can to escort you out of here. If you can leave here alive, I want you to leave the ghost realm and help me pass on a message. The female ghost in green sighed and said, Sister Lin, do you think we still have a chance to leave here alive? Sigh, if I had known, would have advised you not to come in. Although the heavenly book is good, we need to be alive to get it. I have a reason why I had to come. The female ghost in green looked determined and said, Now, what I'm going to tell you is very important. If you can leave here alive, you must go to Yangqiu County in the Great Zhou's North County and help me pass on this message. She whispered a few words to the female ghost in green. Then, she rushed towards the wandering souls without hesitation. The mana in her body fluctuated rapidly. It was obvious that she was going to explode her soul in exchange for a chance for her companion to escape. The female ghost in green wanted to stop her, but it was too late. She stood there, not knowing what to do. The female ghost in green suddenly turned around and said loudly, "Do you want me to die for nothing?" The female ghost in green looked sad. Taking advantage of the moment when she stopped the wandering souls, she flew away without looking back. However, it seemed that the soul energy ripples of the green-clothed female ghost were too strong, causing a commotion among the wandering souls in front of them. More wandering souls surged over from all directions and surrounded them. Among them, there were a few that emitted 6th-level cultivation ripples. The two girls had no chance of escaping. The female ghost in green flew down and stood beside her. She shook her head and said, "It seems that we are going to die together today." This wave of wandering souls was not something they could resist. Facing the powerful wandering souls, the green-clothed female ghost held her hand and closed their eyes, quietly waiting for their end. At this moment, a dazzling golden light suddenly descended from the sky. When the wandering souls touched the golden light, they let out ear-piercing screams and retreated. Two figures landed in front of the two women. The two women opened their eyes and felt that the golden light was very warm and very familiar. Looking at his back, the two women exclaimed at the same time, "Benefactor! Benefactor!" When the young man turned around, what they saw was an unfamiliar face. This caused them to be stunned, and at the same time, they became confused. Li Mu looked at the two female ghosts in front of him and asked in surprise, "Miss Lin, Xiao Yu, why are you two together?" Hearing this familiar voice, the green-clothed female ghost trembled and said excitedly, "Benefactor, it's really you." The green-clothed female ghost immediately floated over and said happily, "Benefactor, I'm not dreaming, am I?" When he was above, Li Mu sensed these two familiar auras. One of them was Lin Wan, whom he met in Yangqiu County and was killed by her fiancé. Later, she turned into a female ghost and was saved by Su He. After Li Mu helped her solve the case, she went to the ghost realm. The other was Xiao Yu, who died unjustly and turned into a malicious ghost. What she did after she lost her mind was not tolerated by the imperial court. After staying in the Jinshan temple for a while, she also came to the ghost realm. Back then, Xiao Yu's cultivation was at the 5th realm, and now she was close to the peak of the 5th realm. Back then, Lin Wan's cultivation was only at the 2nd realm, and now she was at the peak of the 5th realm. Counting it, she was only a little slower than Li Mu's cultivation. Even so, it was incredible. Li Mu looked at them and asked curiously, "How did the two of you know each other?" "Also, Miss Lin's cultivation has improved so quickly," Lin Wan explained. "When I first came to the ghost realm, I accidentally entered the unknown lands because I didn't know the way. Fortunately, I didn't die, and I even encountered some fortuitous encounters. That's why I was able to cultivate to the specter realm so quickly. As for little sister Xiao Yu, we didn't know each other at first, but a few years ago, the Hall of Souls tried to recruit us. Little sister Xiao Yu and I couldn't defeat the Hall of Souls alone, so we worked together to resist them." Li Mu shook his head and said, "Even though your cultivation is not bad, you shouldn't have come here to take the risk." Speaking of this, Lin Wan remembered something more important. The joy of seeing her benefactor was diluted, and she said nervously, "Benefactor, big sister Su is in danger." Hearing those words from her mouth, Li Mu's heart clenched. He quickly asked, "What happened to her?" Lin Wan said worriedly, "Big sister Su obtained that page of the heavenly book and was pursued by the experts of the ghost realm. She fled to the land of the fallen gods. I came here to find her." "What?" Li Mu's expression finally changed. He never thought that the one who obtained the heavenly book would be Su He. With her cultivation, it was impossible for her to survive in the land of the fallen gods. Even if she could avoid the spatial cracks that could be seen everywhere, she wouldn't be able to deal with these powerful wandering souls. At this moment, Li Mu no longer cared about the danger. He immediately took out a page of the heavenly book and closed his eyes to sense it. Just like last time, there were two places in the land of the fallen gods that had the aura of the heavenly book. The two pages of the heavenly book were very far away from him. One of them was moving at high speed. When Li Mu took out the heavenly book, that aura paused for a moment before changing direction and rapidly approaching him. Li Mu ignored it and focused on sensing the other aura. This aura was in the depths of the land of the fallen gods. It was motionless and seemed to still be in its original position. Li Mu didn't know if that page of the heavenly book was still with Suhi, but the other heavenly book was moving faster and faster. Li Mu didn't hesitate and immediately put away the heavenly book in his hand. Just now, he felt an extreme sense of danger in his heart again. Li Mu didn't need divination to know that the owner of that page of the heavenly book had a terrifying cultivation level. To be able to move at such speed in the land of the fallen gods, even an ordinary 7th realm cultivator couldn't do that. In other words, the person who had that page of the heavenly book was at least at the peak of the 7th realm, if not the 8th realm. That was an existence that Li Mu couldn't fight against at the moment. He could sense that person, and that person could also sense Li Mu. The moment he took out the heavenly book, his position was exposed. Li Mu made a prompt decision. We can't stay here for long. Both of you, attach yourself to me. We have to leave immediately. The closer they got to the center of the land of the fallen gods, the more unstable the space became. It was also harder to open the flask space. It was fine to take out small items like the heavenly book, but if a cultivator with a high cultivation level traveled back and forth between the two spaces, it would accelerate the collapse of the space. There was even the risk of the cave space being affected. Li Mu let the two women attach themselves to him. He held Shengguan Li's hand and quickly flew away from this place. Not long after, the fog in a certain direction rolled, and a white-robed figure appeared. The woman looked around, her expression as calm as a pool of stagnant water. She said softly, "You can't run away." Chapter 590. The matters of the world were often so wondrous. Li Mu never thought that he would be able to meet Lin Wan and Xiao Yu again in the ghost domain. Moreover, they had become sisters due to the pressure from the Hall of Souls. With their 5th realm cultivation, forcefully barging into the fallen gods' land was basically a death sentence. However, in order to repay Suhi's kindness, Lin Wan still came without hesitation. This moved Li Mu slightly. Xiao Yu attached herself to Li Mu. She said with surprise and joy, "I never thought that benefactor would also be big sister Lin's benefactor. Is this fate?" Li Mu said to Lin Wan, "Thank you for telling me about her." Lin Wan's worried expression did not disappear. She said, "Benefactor and big sister Su have given me a new life. Even if I die for her, it's nothing." Shengguan Li, who had been silent the entire time, suddenly opened her mouth and asked Li Mu, "Who is this big sister Su you're talking about?" Li Mu did not know how to answer this question. If they were friends, they had experienced life and death together countless times. The word friend could not be used to describe them. However, if they were to go one step further, neither of them had taken the initiative to take that step. However, they had already given their first kiss to each other. Li Mu thought about it and said, "Friends who have gone through life and death together." Shengguan Li did not ask any more questions. Li Mu walked towards the heavenly tomes in the depths of the fallen gods' land as he asked Lin Wan and Xiao Yu about their experiences in the past few years. Back then, after Lin Wan had left Sunhill County and arrived at the ghost domain, she accidentally entered an unknown place because she was not familiar with this place. She was sucked into a spatial crack, but her soul did not disperse. She appeared in a small independent space. There was a mountain range formed from the corpse of a huge dragon and a lake of dense yin qi. She cultivated there day and night. Her cultivation rose rapidly, and she broke through all the realms before long. Only after becoming a specter did she gain the ability to leave that space. According to her description, Li Mu guessed that she should have entered the heavenly flask cave of the ancient cultivators. Coincidentally, before that ancient cultivator died, he engaged in a great battle with a giant beast in the cavern space. The most likely outcome was that both sides perished together. Because the giant beast died in the cavern space, the wandering souls of the ghost realm were unable to enter. That was why Lin Wan was able to take advantage of the situation 10,000 years later. This could be considered her fortuitous encounter. On the path of cultivation, talent and hard work were not as important as fortuitous encounters. And after Xiao Yu entered the ghost realm, because of her own strength, no one dared to provoke her. It was only until Li Mu heavily wounded the demonic Tao, and killed the Nether Saint with the Empress, and then killed several ghost kings under his command, that the Soul Hall's strength was reduced to less than a tenth. They began to vigorously recruit subordinates in the ghost realm, and only then did they set their sights on her. At the same time, Lin Wan was also a target that the Soul Hall wanted to recruit. The two women didn't want to work for the demonic Tao, so they joined forces to resist the demonic Tao that was led by Qingguang Wang. Although their cultivations weren't at the sixth realm, Xiao Yu's supernatural powers restrained soul bodies. With the two women joining forces, the Soul Hall that was already greatly weakened couldn't do anything to them. As the group advanced, they had to be careful of spatial cracks at all times. They had to avoid waves of wandering souls, so their speed wasn't fast. During this time, they also bumped into other factions of the ghost realm. There was no lack of factions that were fighting each other. Here, the various factions had to be on guard against the dangers that came from the land of the fallen gods, but they also had to be careful of other factions. Some of the ghost cultivators had seen Li Mu at the entrance. When they saw him, they stayed far away from him. There were also some forces that Li Mu had never seen before. When they saw that Li Mu was outnumbered, they foolishly approached him. Of course, the result was very miserable. At a certain moment, Li Mu brought them closer to the heavenly book in the depths of the land of the fallen gods. Suddenly, from the fog in front of them, a soul shadow ran out. Behind that soul shadow, there was a powerful aura chasing after it. Closely chasing after it was a wandering soul with the power of the seventh realm. The middle-aged ghost cultivator who was being chased was not weak. Although the aura on his body was weak, his cultivation should have reached the seventh realm. When the middle-aged man saw someone appear, he immediately said, "Thank you for saving me. I will definitely thank you greatly." When she saw the middle-aged ghost cultivator, Shangguan Li's face was filled with hatred. She transmitted her voice to Li Mu, "He's the Rakshasa king." Li Mu raised his eyebrows. The intellectual sword condensed and pierced the wandering soul's body. At the same time, he summoned a thunder net. After the wandering soul was injured, it didn't continue to attack. Instead, it fled into the depths of the fog. Although it hadn't developed intelligence, its instincts were stronger than other wandering souls. It wouldn't throw away its life for no reason. While the Rakshasa king was shocked by this person's strength, he also breathed a sigh of relief. He cupped his hands to Li Mu and said, "Thank you for saving me." "What are you doing?" Before he could finish his words of thanks, a golden light suddenly appeared in front of him. A golden whip wrapped around his waist and dragged him over. The Rakshasa king's expression changed greatly. He roared and his soul scattered. After it reunited, he had already broken free from the restraint. However, at this moment, a bell covered his head and trapped him inside. The Rakshasa king tried to break out of the bell, but he couldn't break it at all. He could only shout to the people outside the bell, "I'm the Rakshasa ghost king. You helped me. Let me out. I will definitely thank you greatly." Li Mu and Shangguan Li looked at him indifferently. They were indifferent to his words. The Rakshasa king continued, "The entire Fengdu city of the ghost realm belongs to me. I also have a huge treasure house. What do you want? I will try my best to satisfy you." Li Mu looked at Shangguan Li and asked, "Ali, what do you want to do with him?" Shangguan Li thought for a moment and said, "Let him hand over a wisp of his life soul." Handing over his life soul meant that he would be controlled by others later. Trapped in the bell, the Rakshasa king's face instantly darkened. He said coldly, "Don't even think about it. I'm a ghost hero. It's impossible for me to hand over my life soul to be your servant. If I wasn't seriously injured, how could I be trapped by you?" Li Mu looked at him and asked, "You won't hand it over, right?" The Rakshasa king's face was full of arrogance. He said coldly, "I'd rather die than hand over my life's soul to you." Li Mu's mind moved, and the Tao bell started to shrink slowly. The Rakshasa king's soul was trapped inside, and the space he could fit in became smaller and smaller. He could only continue to condense his soul power. However, the Tao bell could shrink infinitely, while the Rakshasa king's soul power could only shrink a little. Finally, when the Tao bell shrank to the size of a palm, the Rakshasa king's soul couldn't shrink any further. Inside the Tao bell, he shouted anxiously, "I'll give it to you." "Is that not enough?" The Rakshasa king sullenly handed over a wisp of his life's soul. He never thought that he would be so unlucky on this trip to the land of the fallen gods. First, he met a terrifying woman in white who severely injured him with one strike. Then, when he was running for his life, he accidentally ran into a wandering soul's nest and was chased by a level 7 wandering soul everywhere. When he finally got rid of that wandering soul, he fell into the hands of a human. Unfortunately, he couldn't even use 10% of his peak cultivation. In order to save his life, he could only follow his father's request and give up a wisp of his life soul. After accepting the Rakshasa king's life soul, Li Mu kindly released little Rakshasa, whose cultivation had fallen to level 4, so that the father and son could reunite. When little Rakshasa saw the Rakshasa king, he was stunned for a while before coming back to his senses. At this moment, he'd found a place to vent all the grievances and resentment in his heart, and he cried loudly. "Father, these two fellows seized your treasure vault and seized Fengdu City, and they even forced me to lead the way for them. Quickly kill them and take revenge for me." The Rakshasa king grabbed him and said in shock, "What?" Little Rakshasa pointed at Shangwanli and said, "She's the woman that father snatched back." The Rakshasa king stood there in a daze for a long time. He finally understood why these two people attacked him as soon as they met. It turned out that there was already enmity between them. With his status and strength, he could do whatever he wanted in the ghost realm. He never thought that he would end up like this because of a momentary impulse. Perhaps this was the cycle of karma. The Rakshasa king's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Regret and hatred intertwined. He didn't know what to feel for a moment. At this moment, Li Mu looked at him and asked, "Your cultivation is at level 7. How did you end up like this?" Should he say it or not? If Lord Rakshasa hadn't been severely injured, Li Mu wouldn't have been able to capture him so easily without using the sun-shooting bow. Right now, the land of the fallen gods was the least dangerous. With his cultivation, he shouldn't have been so severely injured. Speaking of this, a trace of fear appeared on the Rakshasa king's face. He said with lingering fear, "The heavenly book has been taken away. That woman's strength is terrifying. I'm no match for her. It wasn't easy for me to escape from her." Li Mu's gaze turned cold. He said in a low voice, "Tell me more details." The Rakshasa king described his experience of escaping from the woman in white again with lingering fear. Li Mu's expression also became more serious than before. The heavenly book that the Rakshasa king mentioned shouldn't be the Ghost Path heavenly book, but the other one that Li Mu sensed. From his words, Li Mu indirectly understood the strength of the owner of the heavenly book. The Rakshasa king wasn't her match. He couldn't even last one round. This meant that this person's cultivation was at least at the peak of level 7. She was even stronger than the Empress. If Li Mu encountered her, there was a high chance that he wouldn't be her match. After Li Mu took out the heavenly book, he obviously became that person's target. The safest thing to do was, of course, to leave this place. Before knowing Su He's whereabouts, Li Mu might have avoided her. But now, he had no way out. He once missed an opportunity. He couldn't lose it a second time. Li Mu looked at the unknown depths of the fog ahead. His gaze was extremely determined. He said in a low voice, "Let's go." Chapter 591. Land of the Fallen Gods. While Li Mu and the rest were silently moving towards the center, most of the forces that had entered this place were like headless flies, wandering aimlessly in the fog. From time to time, someone would die in the spatial cracks and the mouths of wandering souls. However, there were also many people like Li Mu who were heading towards the center with a clear goal in mind. Ming Yi led the Hall of Souls forces and followed behind the white-clothed lady respectfully. A page of the heavenly book floated in front of the white-clothed lady. The heavenly book floated forward at a steady speed. Somewhere in the land of the fallen gods, King Yen Luo, who wore a black dragon robe and a crown of pearls and jade, placed a brush in his palm. He formed a seal with one hand, and the brush spun slowly, also pointing towards the center of the land of the fallen gods. Elsewhere, two figures were walking side by side. An elder asked a middle-aged ghost cultivator beside him, "Do you really know where the heavenly book is?" The middle-aged ghost cultivator said calmly, "Don't worry. This king's subordinate once fought with that ghost cultivator. Although this king can't divine the heavenly book, I can divine her location. If we find her, won't we be able to find the heavenly book?" The elder asked, "Are you sure that with her cultivation, she can enter the center of the land of the fallen gods?" The middle-aged ghost cultivator said, "This is the ghost region. With the heavenly book, she won't die so easily. Let's go. Don't let others get ahead of us." In the center of the land of the fallen gods, a huge whirlpool was spinning rapidly. The fog in a radius of thousands of miles was attracted by this and tightly surrounded the land of the fallen gods. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that this was not a formation of air currents, but a spatial storm. The power of space here was extremely violent and chaotic. If one was accidentally sucked in, even a 6th or 7th realm cultivator would have no chance of survival. At a certain moment, countless figures suddenly walked out of the fog near the edge of the storm. Ming Yi looked at the spatial storm in front of him and couldn't help but feel fear. He respectfully asked the white-clothed lady beside him, "Fifth ancestor, is the heavenly book inside? How should we enter?" The white-clothed lady didn't say much. She only said calmly, "Wait." After receiving the order, Ming Yi ordered the Hall of Souls members to sit cross-legged and wait quietly. Not long after, a figure walked out of the fog. It was a man wearing a pearl and jade crown. He was one of the ghost realm's 4 great ghost kings, Yama King. After seeing the Soul Palace people, a trace of vigilance appeared on his face. He maintained a distance from them and looked at the storm in the center of the ghost realm with a thoughtful expression. After another half a day, 2 more figures appeared from the fog in a certain direction. The Yama King took a look and discovered that it was the Azura King and the Yiksha King. Thus, of the 5 major factions of the Soul Palace, only the Rakshasa King had not come. The old man looked around and said, "King Yen Luo, even the Soul Hall is here. The Rakshasa King probably won't let go of this opportunity. However, it's not easy to enter this spatial storm. After several forces arrived, none of them made any movements. They just waited silently. This spatial storm was also fatal to 7th realm cultivators like them. Before they figured out a way to enter, no one dared to act rashly. Several hours later, some movement came from a certain direction of the fog, and a few figures walked out from it. Rakshasa King, he really came. His aura is a little strange. Is he injured? The person who came was the Rakshasa King. Behind him was a man and 3 women. The Yama King looked at him indifferently and said, "Old ghost, you also came." The Rakshasa King looked back at him and said, "If even you can come, why can't I?" From the corner of his eyes, he saw the white-clothed woman in front of the Soul Hall group. Thinking of the terrifying encounter from before, he began to feel fear in his heart. However, when he remembered Li Mu's instructions, he forcefully suppressed his fear. He walked to the Yama King's side and sent a message with his divine sense, "That page of the heavenly book is in the spatial storm. None of us can enter. What's the point of waiting here?" The Yama King looked at him indifferently. This was a fact that he had to admit. He knew that the page of the heavenly book was in the depths of the fallen god's land, but he didn't expect it to fall into the eye of the storm. Even with their cultivation, entering this place was a 90% chance of death. It was not worth risking their lives for a page of the heavenly book. However, they had already come this far. They were unwilling to give up just like that. Therefore, they waited here in a stalemate with the storm. The Rakshasa King continued, "We can't get that page of the heavenly book for now. However, there's still one page of the heavenly book in the ghost domain. Old ghost, are you interested? The Yama king sneered, if there's such a good thing, would you think of me? The Rakshasa king explained, if I can get that page of the heavenly book alone, I naturally won't look for you. However, I was seriously injured because of that page of the heavenly book and almost died. That's why I asked you to join forces. After we get it, we'll comprehend the heavenly book together. How about it? The Yama king looked at the Rakshasa king, whose breathing was unstable. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. He frowned and asked, is what you said true? The Rakshasa king said unwillingly, if it wasn't for the fact that I can't do it alone, I wouldn't have looked for you. That page of the heavenly book is with the white-clothed woman from the Soul Hall. Her cultivation is very strong. I'm afraid only the four of us can defeat her. The Yama king looked in the direction of the Soul Hall. His gaze turned cold as he asked, you dare to attack the demonic path? The Rakshasa king sneered and said, don't forget where we are. Even if the people from the Soul Hall died here, who would know that we did it? The unknown lands are very dangerous. Perhaps they died in the spatial storm or the soul tide. We can take advantage of this opportunity to eliminate the Soul Hall. Otherwise, they will target us sooner or later. The Rakshasa king's words made the Yama king fall into a short period of contemplation. The Soul Hall in the Ghost region was disliked by the four major factions. They even hated it. They had the backing of the demonic path and acted recklessly in the Ghost region. They invaded the territories of the four major factions and even recruited many experts that originally belonged to them. Eliminating the Soul Hall was definitely something that the four major factions would love to see. After a while, he looked at the Rakshasa king and asked, what do you want to do? The Rakshasa king said, the two of us can't do this either. We have to call those two old ghosts together. The two looked at each other and slowly walked toward the Azura king and Yiksha king who were not far away. Limu looked at the four seventh realm ghost kings who were communicating silently. His gaze was calm and without any ripples. Before coming here, he knew that the expert with the heavenly book would definitely be waiting for him here. As long as he appeared here, a great battle would be unavoidable. Rather than fighting to the death with this person, it was better to unite the major factions of the Ghost region and deal with her together. The Soul Hall of the demonic path was also a thorn in the eyes of the major factions in the Ghost region. The Rakshasa king and the others wanted nothing more than to get rid of it quickly. They had been enduring because of the demonic path's strength. This was a chance for them to work together to eliminate the Soul Hall. It was in line with the common interests of the four major factions of the Ghost region. In another place, the four ghost kings were surrounded by a layer of faint black fog. It was unknown what they were discussing. Gue felt uneasy, but the white-clothed woman's expression remained calm. Her gaze looked into the depths of the fog as if she was waiting for something. The other aura of the heavenly book had not appeared for a long time. After a long time, she retracted her gaze and glanced at the young people brought by the Rakshasa king. Her gaze suddenly stopped on one of them. Then, she slowly walked toward Limu. After she walked dozens of steps, a strong magic power fluctuation suddenly came from where the four ghost kings were gathered. Then, four figures appeared in the four directions of the white-clothed woman. The Azura king, the Yiksha king, the Yenluo king, and the Rakshasa king attacked at the same time. Four supernatural powers bombarded the white-clothed woman. What do you want to do? Gue was some distance away from the white-clothed woman and reacted instantly. He roared and was about to step forward when a cold light suddenly appeared in his eyes. The familiar spear and the unfamiliar young face. Gue was shocked and blurted out, "It's you." Boom! The four seventh realm cultivators attacked at the same time. The white-clothed woman was drowned in the light of the supernatural powers. A huge pit with a radius of 100 feet appeared in the solid ground. When the dust dispersed, the huge pit was empty. At the same time, Limu suddenly felt a sense of danger. His hair stood on end. At this moment, he took the risk of sending Shangwanli, Lin Wan, and Xiaoyu into the cave residence and stepped out at the same time. His figure disappeared on the spot, but another figure appeared behind him. The white-clothed woman looked at Li Mu and said indifferently, "You finally appeared." Seeing the white-clothed woman appear in another place, the four ghost kings were in disbelief. Just now, they had joined forces to seal the space. Logically speaking, this woman from the Hall of Souls should not have been able to dodge. However, what happened just now overturned their understanding. Li Mu was not surprised. Even an elder like Gue Yi had to be respectful to this white-clothed woman. She must be an old monster like Xue He who had inherited memories for tens of thousands of years. Their strength could not be judged by common sense. Li Mu asked directly, "You are one of the 5 ancestors of the demonic way?" The white-clothed woman was silent for a moment. Her expression was somewhat regretful, but also seemed to be reminiscing. She said, "It seems that Xue He did die in your hands." Li Mu said, "He killed countless living beings just for his own cultivation. He deserved to die." The woman stretched out her hand. Her fingernails grew rapidly, emitting a faint cold light like 10 sharp swords. Seeing this, Devil King's expression changed drastically. He frantically warned, "Be careful. Her fingernails can directly injure us. Don't let her touch you." Just as Devil King finished speaking, the sun-shooting bow appeared in Li Mu's hand. He poured all of his magic power into the bow, locked onto the white-clothed woman, and shot out a golden arrow. The strength of these 10,000-year-old monsters could not be judged by common sense. Xue He was only at the 6th realm, and Li Mu was already having a hard time dealing with him. This white-clothed woman's cultivation was clearly at the 7th realm. Li Mu did not hesitate and used his strongest attack. The arrow was shot out silently, but a black mark appeared in the space where the arrow passed. This was the sign of space shattering. At this moment, the 4 ghost kings' expressions changed. Even though they were far away, they could still feel the power of this arrow. If this arrow landed on their bodies, their souls would definitely be destroyed. The appearance of the sun-shooting bow caused the white-clothed woman's face to reveal an unprecedentedly serious expression. The speed of the arrow was extremely fast. Almost at the same time Li Mu shot it, it had already appeared in front of her chest, making it impossible for her to dodge. However, the white-clothed woman did not dodge. Just as the arrow was about to pierce through her chest, her left arm drew an afterimage and accurately caught the golden arrow. Boom! The arrow exploded, forming a black hole where it was. The white-clothed woman's left arm disappeared into the black hole in an instant, but her body teleported to another place. Li Mu did not seem too surprised. The sun-shooting bow was powerful, but it was not invincible. Back then, he had not even been able to deal with Xue He with a single arrow, let alone the white-clothed woman who was even stronger than Xue He. The white-clothed woman did not care about her missing left arm at all. She looked at Li Mu and said indifferently, "Although I don't know why the sun-shooting bow is in your hands, you can't unleash its full power with your cultivation. Furthermore, you can't shoot a second arrow." She was right. Li Mu had gathered all the power in his body to shoot the arrow. Right now, he only had a sliver of power supporting him. Even with the power of the mantra to rapidly recover his power, he would not be able to return to his peak in a short period of time. However, he had already achieved his goal. Li Mu smiled at the white-clothed woman. With a thought, the Law Bell immediately formed a suit of armor that covered his entire body. It followed him into the spatial storm. In the next moment, the white-clothed woman appeared at his original position. She reached out with her remaining right hand, wanting to grab Li Mu. However, she grabbed nothing but air. She could only watch as Li Mu was swallowed up by the spatial storm. Standing in front of the spatial storm, she held her missing left arm as a trace of blood gradually seeped out from the corner of her mouth. She took out a handkerchief from her bosom and gently wiped the corner of her mouth. However, she did not chase after him. Before she was injured, she might have been able to withstand the spatial storm. However, she had already suffered significant injuries from that arrow. She did not have the strength to forcefully break through the spatial storm. In this short period of time, the 4 ghost kings of the ghost realm had already disappeared without a trace. When they saw that arrow and the white-clothed woman who had taken it head-on, they already knew that this kind of battle was not something they could participate in. Chia slowly walked over and asked with lingering fear, "Fifth ancestor, what do we do now?" The white-clothed woman sat down with her legs crossed and said indifferently, "Just wait. He'll come out sooner or later." At this moment, Li Mu was completely enveloped by the armor of the Dao Bell within the spatial storm. He advanced with great difficulty through the chaotic streams of space. He was surrounded by violent spatial power. Once he lost the Dao Bell, his body and soul would be obliterated instantly. Li Mu was not worried about himself. Instead, he was worried about Su He. Even Li Mu, who didn't have the Dao Bell, found it difficult to resist the spatial turbulence, let alone Su He, who was only at the 5th level. Li Mu didn't dare to think too much about it. He continued to advance through the spatial storm. Every step he took here was incredibly difficult, and he wasn't even as fast as a normal person's walking speed. Li Mu moved forward step by step with great difficulty. After an unknown amount of time, he took another step and suddenly threw himself forward. Li Mu stabilized himself. He stepped on the soft green grass and the azure sky above him. Compared to a moment ago, the spatial storm was no longer there. There was also no resistance to his advance. It was as if he had entered another world in an instant. Li Mu turned his head. The wall of storm was right behind him, but it did not extend any further. The distance of this step was between heaven and hell. He suddenly sensed something and looked forward. There was a small lake in front of him. A woman was sitting on the grass beside the lake with her back to him. When Li Mu walked toward her, the woman also slowly turned her head. Chapter 592. On the lawn by the lake, their eyes met. Seeing the face that he had been thinking about for a long time, Li Mu's heart, which had been in his throat for a long time, finally relaxed. Su He stared at Li Mu in a daze. Her eyes were filled with astonishment. Li Mu looked at Su He. His lips moved several times. There were countless words in his heart that he wanted to say. After taking a deep breath, he only said, "Long time no see." Su He slowly floated over. Her eyes were filled with suspicion. She reached out and pinched Li Mu's face. Then, she touched his body from head to toe. Then, she asked in disbelief, "Is it really you?" Li Mu shrugged and said, "Haven't you already touched it?" Su He should know his body better than he did. After all, she had entered his body before, and more than once. In Su He's eyes, the astonishment and suspicion gradually turned into endless joy. She blurted out, "Why are you here?" Li Mu explained, "Originally, I came to the ghost domain to look for the heavenly book. On the way, I met Lin Wan. She said that the heavenly book was in your hands. So, I followed the response of another page of the heavenly book and came here." Su He glanced at him and then lowered her head. She did not let Li Mu see the disappointment in her eyes. She said calmly, "So you came to look for the heavenly book." Li Mu rejoiced, "Fortunately, I came here to look for the heavenly book. Otherwise, it would be impossible to find you." Su He was startled. Her expression was a little surprised and a little happy. She had never thought that Li Mu, who was as dull as a log, would say such words one day. If he had this performance earlier, there would not have been so many things in the past 2 years. When Su He fell into silence, Li Mu continued to ask, "Why did you leave without saying goodbye last time? Where have you been all this time?" Su He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Humans and ghosts have different paths. I'm a ghost, so the ghost realm is naturally more suitable for me. After leaving the northern county, I came to the ghost realm to cultivate for a while. Later on, I randomly picked up a heavenly scroll and came here to avoid being hunted." Li Mu's expression was slightly puzzled as he asked, "With your cultivation, how could you possibly enter deep into the land of the fallen gods? How did you reach the 6th realm so quickly?" When she parted ways with Li Mu, Su He had just stepped into the 5th realm. Unless she encountered a great opportunity or was like Lu Han Yen and Li Qing, who had the support of a sect and the realm breaker pill, it was impossible for her to advance so quickly. Su He rolled her eyes at him and said unhappily, "When we first met, you were still a small cultivator in the 1st realm. At that time, I was already in the 4th realm. Now, I'm in the 6th realm and you're in the 6th realm. Who's faster? Li Mu said embarrassedly, in the 2 years that we parted ways, I encountered some opportunities again. He did not care about this question and explained, originally, I was only in the late stage of the 5th realm. However, after I obtained the heavenly scroll, I comprehended some ghost cultivation methods from it and somehow advanced. Later on, I was hunted down and fled here. Then, I accidentally got sucked into a spatial storm. I thought that I would definitely die, but when I woke up, I was already here. Until now, I still don't know where this place is. Li Mu, this is the center of the land of the fallen gods. It should also be the center of the spatial storm. Speaking of which, it was rather strange. A few dozen steps behind Li Mu, the spatial storm was strong enough to tear apart the body and soul of a 7th-level cultivator. However, there was no fog, no wandering souls, and no spatial rifts here. It was like a paradise. Li Mu continued to ask, you didn't encounter any powerful wandering souls? He nodded and then shook her head, I don't know why, but those wandering souls did not attack me. The wandering souls that only knew violence and killing actually let her go. The spatial storm also did not cause her any harm. Li Mu was almost certain that this was because of the heavenly scroll. Seeing that he was completely fine here, Li Mu was relieved. Then, he said, can you let me see the page of the heavenly scroll that you obtained? He did not say anything. She took out a page of the heavenly scroll and handed it to Li Mu. Li Mu took the heavenly scroll and touched it with his spiritual sense. His consciousness quickly entered a familiar space. Familiar ancient cultivators, familiar beasts, and familiar battlefields. Li Mu saw in this page of the heavenly scroll that in that earth-shattering battle, the human ancient cultivators defeated the beasts in the end. However, the space where the battlefield was located was completely destroyed. The mountain-like corpses of the beasts lay on the battlefield. After their deaths, endless Qi surged out from their bodies and completely changed the area, causing it to become a gloomy place where the sun could not be seen. The ghost domain was filled with spatial cracks because the space had collapsed due to the battle. Meanwhile, those wandering souls were formed from the remnant soul power of the beasts and ancient cultivators that died here. A portion of the soul power gathered together and gradually gave birth to soul power spirits over the long years. These soul power spirits did not have intelligence. Affected by the remnant baleful aura of the ancient battlefield, they would instinctively attack all people with souls and devour their soul power to strengthen themselves. The Ghost Dao heavenly scroll floated in Li Mu's hand. Li Mu extended his other hand and another 9 pages of the heavenly scroll appeared. He was astonished. How do you have so many heavenly scrolls? Li Mu replied, I'll explain it to you in the future. When the remaining 9 pages of the heavenly scroll appeared, another page seemed to be attracted and automatically flew into it. The door that appeared before Li Mu's eyes was even clearer than before. Outside the spatial storm, the white-clothed woman who was recuperating with her eyes closed suddenly opened her eyes. Just a moment ago, she had actually sensed the aura of 10 pages of the heavenly scroll. If she could obtain these 10 pages of the heavenly scroll, in addition to the 24 pages that the demon Dao had collected over the past 10,000 years, only a few pages were not in their hands. Deciphering the secrets of the heavenly scroll would be just around the corner. In the quiet place at the center of the storm, Li Mu returned the heavenly scroll to Suhi and said, when we get out, I'll decipher the entire contents of this page of the heavenly scroll for you. Suhi did not accept it and said, it's better if you keep it. I can't comprehend much of it with the heavenly scroll in my hands. Li Mu looked at the wall of storm and said, then let's get out. Suhi shook her head. Although I don't know how I came in, with my current cultivation, I can't pass through that wall of storm. Moreover, with that wall here, this is the safest place in the ghost domain. Once we leave, I'm afraid the heavenly scroll will attract countless people to fight over it. At that time, there will definitely be 7th realm experts intervening. With our strength, we won't be able to protect the heavenly scroll. Li Mu smiled. Don't worry, I'll protect you. Suhee glanced at him and recalled some past events. A smile appeared at the corner of her mouth as she said, "When I was in Yangshuo County, I never thought that there would be a day when I would be protected by you." Li Mu looked at her and suddenly said, "If you're willing, I can protect you for the rest of your life." Suhee stared blankly for a moment, her expression at a loss. She muttered, What did you say?" Li Mu looked into her eyes and said seriously, "There was once a sincere feeling placed in front of me, but I didn't cherish it. It was only after I lost it that I regretted it. At that time, I swore that if the heavens gave me another chance, I would definitely say something to that girl." He held Suhee's ice-cold hand and asked, "Are you willing to let me protect you for the rest of your life?" Suhee, who had always been bold and unrestrained, did not dare to meet Li Mu's gaze at this moment. She looked away and shook her head. "You're a human, I'm a ghost." "Humans and ghosts walk different paths," Li Mu asked. "Do you think I care about these things?" Suhee slowly raised her head. If Li Mu cared about these things, there would not be her favorite, strange stories from a Chinese studio. She looked at Li Mu and suddenly said, "Ask me again." Li Mu asked, "What?" Suhee angrily pinched his waist. Li Mu quickly coughed and said seriously, "Are you willing to let me protect you for the rest of your life?" Suhee looked into his eyes and said, "I'm willing." The next moment, a breeze blew over. Li Mu fell on the soft grass and smelled the fragrance of the grass. Chapter 593. Li Mu lay on the grass and felt a cold touch on his lips. He was once again forcefully kissed by Suhee. But this time, Li Mu could respond to her. After a long time, their lips parted. Suhee pressed her face against his chest and said with some surprise, "I thought that you would never say those words." Li Mu intertwined his fingers with hers and said apologetically, "Sorry for making you wait." Suhee looked up and blinked at him. She said, "You seem different from before." Li Mu asked, "What's different?" Suhee shook her head and didn't say anything else. She just quietly leaned against Li Mu and murmured, "I wonder when I will be able to cultivate to the 9th realm." Li Mu said, "It is enough that I protect you." "Why must you reach realm 9? Suhee tightened her grip on his hand and said, "I want my hand to have the same temperature as other women's when you hold my hand." Li Mu's hand was cold. While she could turn into a human, she was still a soul body. The extreme yin attribute of a soul body could not be changed or disguised. Li Mu understood now that Suhee had left without saying goodbye because she felt that she and Li Mu were different. This was a knot in her heart that she still had not solved. As for level 9 cultivators, they were basically existences on another level. Reconstructing their physical bodies was not difficult for them. Li Mu held her cold hands with both hands and said, "If you want to cultivate to the 9th realm, I will accompany you." Suhee's gaze was fixed on him. Not long after, Li Mu was once again pinned under her. Her slightly cold lips pressed against his again. This kiss was even longer. Then, she seemed to realize something and suddenly sat on top of Li Mu. Pressing against his chest, she looked down at him and asked, "In the time that I was not here, how many experiences did you have with other women to become like this?" She would find out about these things sooner or later. In the face of Suhee's questions, Li Mu could honestly answer. After a while, Suhee's shocked voice came from Li Mu's body. "Empress of the Great Zhou, Queen of the Yao Kingdom, have you been looking for women these past 2 years? Have you been cultivating properly?" Li Mu explained, "Of course I have been cultivating properly. Otherwise, how could my cultivation speed be so fast?" Suhee's hand, which was originally on his chest, moved to his waist. She angrily pinched Li Mu's waist and asked, "Empress of the Great Zhou and Queen of the Yao Kingdom, you are so proactive. But when it comes to me, you are so reserved. 2 years ago, if you were like this, would I be behind them? I was clearly here before them." Seeing her chest heaving up and down because of anger, Li Mu explained, "Back then, I was young and ignorant. Back then, when it came to relationships, he was indecisive and submissive." After 2 years of experience, Li Mu had thought through many things clearly. So when he met Suhee again, he was so decisive and straightforward. He did not hesitate at all. He did not want to repeat the same mistakes. A large part of the reason for his change was the appearance of the Phantom Princess and the Empress, which led to his encounter with Su He and the quick to cut the Gordian knot, Li Mu. Seeing her angry and indignant appearance, Li Mu pulled her into his arms and said, all right. When we get out, I will help you become the master of the ghost realm. This way, your status will not be inferior to theirs. Although Su He's expression eased, she still curled her lips and said, with just you, a small Dongxian? Li Mu stood up while holding her hand and said, let's go, it's time to leave this place. I will also let you see what your future husband is capable of. Hearing Li Mu's self-description, Su He's lips curled into a smile. She then looked at the nearby wall of storm and asked, how do we get out? Li Mu smiled and said, it's still the same as before. You can possess my body and leave the rest to me. On the lawn, Su He took a step forward and entered Li Mu's body. Li Mu summoned the Dao Bell, which once again formed armor to cover his entire body. Then, he stepped into the wall of storm. The magical power in his body had long been restored, and the spatial storm could no longer obstruct him. In a great mood, Li Mu strode forward. In the land of the fallen gods, outside the giant spatial vortex, the white-clothed woman who was sitting cross-legged and recuperating suddenly opened her eyes. In front of her, a figure slowly walked out of the storm. She stood up, looked at Li Mu, and said indifferently, you've finally come out. Li Mu looked at her with an equally indifferent expression and said, you want my heavenly book, and I am also somewhat interested in yours. A rare smile appeared on the white-clothed woman's face as she said, the heavenly book is with me. If you want it, come and get it yourself. The white-clothed woman did not move, but the people of the Hall of Souls behind her could no longer hold themselves back. Ming Yi led King Qingguang and the other ghostly cultivators to surround Li Mu. At this moment, a double image appeared on Li Mu's body. Su He appeared beside Li Mu and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. She stretched out her hands and formed a strange seal. Ming Yi had already condensed a ball of soul fire in his hand. His expression suddenly changed, and his body moved 30 meters to the side. Boom! Several spells and abilities bombarded the spot where he had just been, and a huge pit appeared on the ground. Ming Yi turned back to look at King Qingguang and the other 6th realm ghostly cultivators of the Hall of Souls and said furiously, are you crazy? How dare you attack me? At this moment, King Qingguang and the others were like wandering souls. There was no spirit in their eyes, and they actually attacked Ming Yi again. Ming Yi was instantly enraged. The aura in his body suddenly erupted. With his 7th realm cultivation, he instantly suppressed these people. However, he still could not understand the actions of King Qingguang and the others. He shouted sternly, what are you doing? Only the white-clothed woman's expression changed. She stared at Su He and said softly, you actually comprehended the secret of the heavenly book. As soon as she finished speaking, she seemed to have thought of something. She looked at Li Mu and said, heart of 7 orifices. Li Mu noticed the change in the white-clothed woman. He was already convinced that the demon path indeed knew the secret of the ghost path heavenly book. They did not send out such an old monster when the demon path heavenly book appeared last time. This time, even the 5th ancestor came personally for the reappearance of the Ghost Path Heavenly Book. Li Mu only knew that the Ghost Path Heavenly Book contained a huge secret after deciphering this page of the Heavenly Book. The cultivation method of the ghost cultivators was originally the same as that of the human tribe. They cultivated their souls by cultivating their primordial spirit. Later, a ghost cultivator created a cultivation method unique to the ghost way, which sped up the cultivation speed of the ghost cultivators and also increased their strength. This allowed the ghost cultivators to fight against human cultivators and the demon tribe with their souls even though they lacked a physical body. The ghostly cultivator who created this cultivation method was undoubtedly the one who understood ghostly cultivators the most. When he created this cultivation method, he also created a special ability. This special ability was called the Slavish Ghost. It was used to control souls for one's own use. With Su He's cultivation, she could control several ghostly cultivators who were similar to her cultivation at the same time. It was enough to show how overbearing this special ability was. It was no wonder that the demon path valued this page of the heavenly book so much. The one who obtained the Ghost Path Heavenly Book would obtain the Ghost Realm. With this special ability, one could control all the ghostly cultivators in the world and become the master of all ghosts. Just as Ming Yi was dealing with King Qingguang and the others in exasperation, the fog in the distance began to surge violently. Wandering souls flew out from it and whistled toward the white-clothed woman. Chapter 594. There were two prerequisites for using the ghost-slaying technique. Firstly, the caster had to be a ghostly cultivator. This technique was too overbearing. Once it was used, ghostly cultivators of the same level would not be able to escape its control. If it fell into the hands of another race, then almost all ghostly cultivators would be reduced to slaves. The expert who created this technique was a ghostly cultivator. Naturally, he did not want to see such a thing happen. This restriction basically prevented such a thing from happening. Secondly, the ghost-slaying technique was not a standalone technique. To use this technique, one had to rely on the Heavenly Book. In other words, a ghostly cultivator who obtained the Heavenly Book and comprehended its mysteries would be the true master of all ghosts. As a ghostly cultivator, Suhi easily controlled King Qingguang and the others. Under her command, more wandering souls flew out of the fog and pounced on the white-clothed woman. Only a few of these wandering souls had reached the 6th realm. The rest were all below the 6th realm. With her current cultivation, she was still unable to control a 7th realm spirit ghost. Faced with the surging wandering souls, the white-clothed woman stood in place with a calm expression, allowing the wandering souls to drown her. The wandering souls shuttled through her body, but did not cause any harm to her. This was because the wandering soul's attacks were mainly aimed at the soul body. However, this 5th ancestor of the demonic way was a spiritual corpse. Her consciousness was hidden in her body, and she did not have a soul body at all. On the other hand, zombies absorbed the essence of blood and souls of humans, which greatly restrained these wandering souls. She only took a light breath, and the bodies of countless wandering souls collapsed, turning into the purest soul power, which was absorbed into her body. However, Li Mu did not expect these wandering souls to pose any threat to this 10,000-year-old monster. The moment the wandering souls blocked her, Li Mu had already drawn his bow and shot an arrow. The sun's shooting bow was drawn, and the arrow did not miss. No matter how she dodged, the arrow would definitely land on her body. The white-clothed woman had lost an arm. She used her other arm to grab the arrow. The golden arrow exploded, and her remaining arm was also swallowed by the power of space. However, the magic power that Li Mu had gathered with great difficulty was once again exhausted. The white-clothed woman lost her arms, but her aura became even more terrifying. She coldly snorted and said, "Even if you have the sun's shooting bow, what's the use? After shooting an arrow, you will still be at the mercy of others." Li Mu smiled. "Oh, is that so?" Just as he finished speaking, Suhi took a step forward and merged with Li Mu. Li Mu drew his bow again, and the sun's shooting bow shot out another arrow, heading straight for the white-robed woman. As soon as the arrow was released, it locked onto her. No matter how rich this woman's combat experience was, her cultivation level had only just reached the 7th realm. If one arrow from the sun's shooting bow could not kill her, then 2 arrows would do. After he found Suhi, the roles of the hunter and the hunted had changed. The white-clothed woman clearly did not expect Li Mu to have such a move. A white light appeared around her body, forming a white light shield. The white light shield blocked the arrow for a moment before it hit the white-clothed woman. Boom! With her body as the center, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The ripples of magic power spread out, pushing Guai, King Qingguang, and the others who were fighting far away. After the ripples dispersed, the white-clothed woman's figure appeared again. At this moment, she'd lost both her arms, her hair was disheveled, and her white clothes were tattered and covered in stains. Her body was covered in terrifying wounds, yet they were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In next to no time, her wounds had recovered to their original state, and even her arms had grown back. However, this did not mean that her injuries were completely healed. On the contrary, the aura that she exuded now was even weaker than when she lost both her arms. It was only about 20% of her peak. Even so, under the condition that Li Mu and Su He's spiritual energy were depleted, this was enough to crush everything. The white-clothed woman looked coldly at Li Mu and said in a low voice, "If you don't have any other helpers, you can die now." After Su He walked out of Li Mu's body, she formed a spell with both hands. A 6th-level wandering soul floated from afar and entered Li Mu's body. Li Mu picked up the sun's shooting bow, and the bowstring began to flash with golden light again. He smiled at the white-clothed woman and said, "Stop, these are all my ghosts." This time, the white-clothed woman's expression changed. She could withstand 1 or 2 arrows from the sun's shooting bow, and even a 3rd arrow. However, if Li Mu kept shooting like this, she would still die under the bow. The woman had clearly comprehended the secrets of the Ghost Path Heavenly Book. With her cultivation, all the ghosts in the ghost realm below the 7th level obeyed her orders. This was enough for Li Mu to shoot arrow after arrow. The white-clothed woman retreated and instantly disappeared into the fog. Facing an undefeatable opponent, she decisively chose to escape. The sage sect had already lost Blood River. They could not lose her as well. Li Mu did not chase after her. The mana in his body had been exhausted, and he needed time to recover. He also did not have enough 6th-level wandering souls with him. If he rashly chased after her, the roles of the hunter and the hunted might change again. The 5th ancestor had already escaped, and Ming Yi did not want to continue fighting. Just as he was about to leave, his body suddenly trembled, and he felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around and saw that Li Mu's golden arrow had already locked onto him. Li Mu looked at Ming Yi and smiled coldly. He said lightly, "Why don't you try to move?" Ming Yi had already made a hand seal to escape. Under Li Mu's threat, he slowly withdrew his hand. He was well aware of the power of this arrow. If this arrow could seriously injure the 5th forefather, then killing him would not be a problem. At this time, King Qingguang and the others, who had escaped from Su He's control, also regained their mobility. They retreated quickly and looked at Su He with extremely frightened eyes. They clearly knew what had just happened. The woman in front of them was the most terrifying existence they had ever met in their lives. In front of her, they could not even think of resisting. Although they knew in their hearts that they could not attack Elder Ming Yi, their bodies did not dare to disobey her orders. They had never encountered such a strange situation before. They stood behind Ming Yi and lowered their heads, not daring to look at the woman in front of them. Ming Yi looked at Li Mu warily and asked, "What do you want to do?" Li Mu sneered and asked, "What do I want to do? You were the ones who caused trouble for me first, and now you're asking me what I want to do. Don't you people of the Devil sect know what you're doing?" Ming Yi's lips moved, and he was speechless for a moment. At this time, Li Mu looked at Ming Yi and said coldly, "Since you've fallen into my hands today, we'll settle the old and new debts together. Hand over the soul blood and serve me as your master, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I'll send you to see Blood River." Upon hearing Blood River's name, Ming Yi's eyelids twitched. Li Mu had even killed the 4th ancestor, so it should not be difficult for him to kill him. However, it was difficult for him to accept this person as his master. Ming Yi hesitated for a moment. Li Mu released his hand and the arrow in his hand shot out. The powerful energy caused a spatial rift. Ming Yi's body collapsed under the arrow. Just as his primordial spirit was about to be devoured, Li Mu reached out and grabbed at the void. He used fishing for the moon at the bottom of the sea to fish out his primordial spirit. Li Mu looked at his primordial spirit and said, "You still have one more chance." As soon as he finished speaking, Ming Yi's life spirit appeared in front of him. Li Mu did not hesitate when he shot the arrow just now. Ming Yi was only left with his primordial spirit and could not withstand a second arrow. After taking Ming Yi's life spirit, Li Mu naturally did not let go of King Qingguang and the others. Although the 5 ancestors of the demonic path had escaped, the people of the Soul Hall had all fallen into Li Mu's hands. As long as he subdued the other ghost kings of the ghost realm, the entire ghost realm would become his backyard. At that time, the demon kingdom would have Phantom Princess, the ghost realm would have Su He, and the Great Zhou would have the Empress. Li Mu would become the man behind the 3 most powerful women on this continent. Just thinking about it gave him a different kind of excitement. After the excitement, Li Mu felt like he had forgotten something. After thinking carefully, he opened the flask Heaven's Space and released Shangguan Li and Little Yu Lin Wan. Chapter 595. Big Sister Su. Lin Wan had just left the Demon Emperor's space when she saw Su He beside Li Mu. She quickly ran to her side and said excitedly, "Big Sister Su, you're fine." "That's great." Su He touched her hair and smiled. "Long time no see." Lin Wan was indebted to Li Mu because he helped her take revenge. Su He had given Lin Wan a new lease on life. Without Su He, she would not have her current cultivation and situation. At most, she would only become a soul that died a tragic death in Yangqiu County. "This is Xiao Yu, and this is Shangguan Li." Li Mu gave a simple introduction to Su He. Then, he said, "This is not the place to talk. Let's go back to Fengdu City first." He had already obtained the Ghost Path Heavenly Book and met Su He. This was the biggest surprise of this trip. There was no need to stay in the land of the fallen gods. What he needed to do next was to help Su He control the ghost realm. Devil King had already been subdued by Li Mu. Feng Yi, King Qingguang, and the others had also handed over their life souls. Out of the 5 major factions of the ghost realm, only 3 were left. When they came here, they were attacked by countless wandering souls. On the way back, they were surrounded by wandering souls. Feng Yi and the people of Soul Hall were dumbfounded. King Qingguang and the other ghosts recalled the experience of being controlled by Su He. They were terrified. At that time, they were just like these wandering souls. They could not resist that woman's orders. Now that they thought about it, even if that woman told them to kill themselves, they probably would not have disobeyed. This was a kind of suppression that came from the depths of their souls. No matter how strong their minds were, they could not escape. As the group of people and countless wandering souls rushed out of the land of the fallen gods, Devil King looked at the empty treasury in Fengdu City. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. That bastard had emptied his entire treasure pavilion, not leaving behind a single piece of spirit jade, a single strand of soul force, or even a single stalk of spirit medicine. At this moment, he was extremely conflicted. He hoped that Li Mu would come back. That way, he would have a chance to get back what originally belonged to him. The demonic path's white-clothed female corpse was extremely powerful. It was obvious that Li Mu was not her match. Even if he managed to escape from her grasp, he should be an arrow at the end of its flight. Thus, he still had a chance. At the same time, he also hoped that Li Mu would not return. After all, the might of that person's bow had truly intimidated the Rakshasa king. He had trained hard for more than 100 years to reach his current level of cultivation. A single arrow from the other party was enough to scatter his soul. Furthermore, his life spirit was still in the other party's hands. If he was not careful, his 100 years of cultivation would be destroyed by a single arrow. Just as Rakshasa King was feeling conflicted, an aura suddenly appeared outside Fengdu City. That was the aura of his life spirit. Thoughts ran through Luosha King's mind. Li Mu must have been chased by the female corpse in white and fled here. Now that Li Mu was seriously injured and his mana was exhausted, Luosha King had a chance to take back his life spirit and take revenge. At the thought of this, a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. His body shot up and rushed toward the entrance of Fengdu City. In Fengdu City, Li Mu, Su He, Shanghai Li, and the others slowly walked in. As soon as they stepped through the city gates, a powerful aura rapidly approached them. From afar, Rakshasa King saw Li Mu and the respectful Soul Hall cultivators following behind him. Among them was even 7th Realm Elder Ming Yi. After being stunned for a moment, Rakshasa King withdrew his murderous intent and landed in front of Li Mu. He said respectfully, "Welcome back to the city, my lord." Li Mu had come to Fengdu City this time. Other than the Soul Hall cultivators, there were also the Ghost Realm cultivators he had subdued outside the land of the fallen gods, as well as the 6th Realm Ghost cultivators he had captured at the beginning. As the Lord of Fengdu City, Rakshasa King was earnestly fulfilling his duty as a guide. As he invited Li Mu and the others back to the Ghost King Palace, he asked tentatively, "May I ask, my lord, where is that powerful demonic woman?" "She ran away." Li Mu said regretfully, "She also had a heavenly book. It's a pity that I didn't catch her." The heavenly books of the demonic Tao had always only been entered and not exited. They were the ones who robbed others, but no one robbed them. This was Li Mu's chance. Unfortunately, that old monster was too powerful and escaped too quickly. With Li Mu's current strength, he couldn't do anything to her. She ran away? The Rakshasa king's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He had personally experienced how powerful that woman was. Although her cultivation level was only at the 7th realm, killing him was as easy as slaughtering a dog. Even Li Mu's terrifying archery skills had not been able to kill her, and he had been chased into the spatial storm by her. It had only been a short while, but the roles of the hunter and the hunted had been reversed. Not only that, Rakshasa King could tell at a glance that the people of the Hall of Souls had been subdued by Li Mu. He was curious and bewildered. What happened in the land of the fallen gods after they escaped? Only then did Rakshasa King realize that his escape might cause Li Mu's displeasure. He hurriedly explained, "My lord, please don't blame me. I'm really no match for that female corpse." Li Mu waved his hand and didn't intend to pursue the matter. Rakshasa King was finally relieved. A moment later, in the Ghost King Palace of Fengdu City, Li Mu called Ming Yi over and asked straightforwardly, "What's the method you mentioned last time that can prolong a cultivator's life?" Ming Yi shook his head and said, "I only know that there's such a method. Only the 3rd forefather and the 5th forefather know the specifics of the technique." Li Mu could tell that Ming Yi wasn't lying. With his identity and status in the devil path, he didn't seem to be qualified to know such a heaven-defying technique. After dismissing Ming Yi, Li Mu took out a page of the heavenly book. He couldn't sense the existence of the heavenly book in the hands of the woman in white. She must have put it away. Although Li Mu had temporarily forced her to retreat, he only had the ability to contend with her in the ghost realm. Without a large number of wandering souls to provide him with magic power, he could only shoot one arrow at most. One arrow from the sun's shooting bow couldn't kill her. If his magic power was exhausted, he would be in a dangerous situation. If his cultivation improved a little more and reached the level of the slovenly Taoist priest, this 5th forefather of the devil path wouldn't be much of a threat in his eyes. Li Mu was thinking about how to obtain the heavenly book in the hands of the woman in white. Shangguanli walked in from outside and asked Li Mu, "What's your relationship with Sister Su?" Li Mu said, "Didn't I say it before? Friends of life and death." Shangguanli snorted and said, "Your relationship doesn't seem like friends of life and death." Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a scholar called Ning Kaichen and a female ghost called Nye Xiaoqian." After hearing Li Mu's story, Shangguanli suddenly understood and said angrily, "So this is what you mean by friends of life and death? When I go back, I'll tell His Majesty that you and a female ghost." She looked at Li Mu with an incomparably angry expression. "You have 2 wives, Xiao Bai and Wan Wan, who are infatuated with you. In addition, you have His Majesty. You're still not satisfied. Is there anyone in this world more lecherous than you?" Little Rakshasa poked his head out of the hall and said, "Lords, my father asked me to guard outside. If you have any orders, you can call me at any time." Li Mu glanced at little Rakshasa. He had to marry a new bride every month. Of course, there were people or ghosts more lecherous than him in this world. Shangguanli understood Li Mu's gaze and looked at little Rakshasa. Her face darkened and she said angrily, "Scram, don't let me see you again." Chapter 596. Fengdu City, Ghost King Palace. When Li Mu took away Rakshasa King's life soul and asked him to do things, he was reluctant. But this time, he suddenly became enthusiastic and arranged everything for Li Mu. He even asked his son to follow Li Mu and listen to his orders. Li Mu asked little Rakshasa King to call Rakshasa King and Feng Yi, and said, "You two, come with me to Laoshan City." Fengdu City was the first large city that cultivators would pass through after entering the ghost realm. If they left Fengdu City and went deeper into the ghost realm according to the map, The next city they would pass through would be Laoshan City. Laoshan City was Azura King's territory. Since Li Mu already had the intention to help Su He conquer the Ghost Realm, he would have to find the other 3 Ghost Kings sooner or later. Hearing Li Mu mention Laoshan City, Rakshasa King realized something and asked tentatively, "Sir, are we going to find Azura King?" Li Mu looked in the direction of Laoshan City and said, "After being divided for so many years, it's time for the Ghost Realm to be united." Rakshasa King heard this and showed a gloating expression. They were all 4 Ghost Kings. Why did he have to hand over his life's soul while the other 3 were not restrained and could live freely? It was only fair that everyone was the same. He took the initiative to walk forward and said, "I'm familiar with the way to Laoshan City. I'll lead the way for you." Compared to Rakshasa King, Feng Yi's expression was more complicated. When facing Li Mu, the 5th ancestor escaped and he lost his physical body. His life's soul was in Li Mu's hands. He did not dare to disobey his orders. Li Mu was very ambitious. He had conquered the Soul Hall and Rakshasa King, but he was not satisfied and wanted to conquer the Ghost Realm. With his strength that far surpassed ordinary Dongxian and that terrifying Bao, no one could stop him. It was only a matter of time before he conquered the other 3 Ghost Kings. With the addition of the Yao Nation and the Great Zhou, the Zhou continent and the Xing continent among the 10 continents would be under his control. A few years ago, he was still a nobody. But in just a few years, he had become the most troublesome opponent for Glory Sect. Laoshan City was the closest to Fengdu, so Li Mu chose King Azura first. Su He had Ghost Path Heavenly Book, and even though she couldn't control a 7th Realm Ghost King, she could still suppress them quite a bit, so Li Mu planned to go with her. After Shangguanli heard this, he stepped forward and said, "I'll go too." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "You won't be of much help even if you go. Just stay here." After being rejected by Li Mu, Shangguanli watched as they left hand in hand. She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. "What do you mean you can't help? You're just afraid that I'll disturb you." Lin Wan's face revealed a gratified expression. She whispered, "Benefactor and Sister Su look really compatible." Shangguanli glanced at her and said indignantly, "How are they compatible? One is clearly a human, and the other is a ghost." Lin Wan retorted, "So what if one is a human and the other is a ghost? Love doesn't discriminate between races. Haven't you read Strange Stories from a Strange Story?" Shangguanli was stunned. "Don't you know that Strange Stories from a Strange Story is?" Lin Wan asked, "What is it?" Shangguanli's lips moved, but she finally waved her hand and said, "Nothing. In the past, there were also people in Great Zhou who were together with ghost men and demons, but that was something done by the nobles who had special hobbies. The common people still avoided this kind of taboo love that transcended race and life and death. But ever since the appearance of Strange Stories from a Strange Story and its popularity in the Great Zhou, people's views gradually changed. It was unknown when it started, but the love between humans and demons, the friendship of life and death, not only was it not rejected and disgusted by people, but it became something that people admired and yearned for. In the past few years, even some of the originally normal idioms had some more abnormal meanings. Shangguanli still remembered that when she was in school, friends of life and death were still used to describe friendship. Heroes of the grasslands were also not used to describe Su Xian. The oneness of man and nature had nothing to do with Dong Yong, but now, not to mention the above, she couldn't even look directly at words like running amok, pestering endlessly, and taking advantage of the dragon's position. And the main culprit of all this was Li Mu. Shangguanli had reason to suspect that from that time, Li Mu had been preparing for today. He had an unclear relationship with that fox from the Yao Kingdom, and he also had a pair of snake demon sisters with bad intentions. Last time, after Qing Xian went out with him, the way she looked at him when she came back was different from before. Now, in the ghost domain, he also had a female ghost that he had a good relationship with. Didn't all of them match up? Li Mu was held by Su He, and Rakshasa Wang Ming followed behind them like an attendant. They walked unhurriedly through the fog of the ghost domain. When they first left Fengdu City, in fact, he could see that Shangguanli was not very happy. But she was already full of complaints about Li Mu. If he brought her, a third wheel, along, he was afraid that the journey would not be peaceful. Walking hand in hand in the fog, Suhi suddenly said, "You and Miss Shangwan, are you also?" Li Mu knew what she was talking about and hurriedly explained, "Don't misunderstand, the two of us are innocent. Besides, Li likes women." This was really a big misunderstanding. Li Mu and Shangwan Li were rivals in love, not lovers. The difference of one word was 1,000 miles. She was still brooding over Li Mu snatching the Empress away. Suhi glanced at him and said indifferently, "I'm just asking, why are you so nervous? In any case, there are already so many people in front of me, I don't mind having a few more behind me." Li Mu said helplessly, "How can there be so many behind her, including Wan Wan and Xiao Bai? There were only 2 people." Suhi asked, "Have you seen Inshin after that?" Li Mu had almost forgotten about the 2 snakes and didn't know how their cultivation was. He nodded and said, "I have seen her. She is now cultivating in seclusion in the East Sea. When she comes out, I will bring her to find you." Mang Mountain City wasn't close to Fengdu, but the roads that connected the major cities of the Ghost Domain didn't have any danger and could be passed through without worry. Even if Li Mu and the rest didn't rush at full speed, they still arrived at Mang Mountain City in 2 hours. From afar, Li Mu saw a majestic city in the mountains. It was situated in the fog of the Ghost Domain. Luosha King and Ming Yi didn't restrain their auras. When the 4 of them were about to reach the city gate, a light flashed outside Mang Mountain City. A huge array suddenly activated and enveloped the entire Mang Mountain City. An old man's figure stood in the array and looked at them. He said vigilantly, "Luosha, what are you and the people of Seoul Hall doing here?" Luosha King stood outside the array and said to the old man, "Old Ghost, my lord wants to unify the Ghost Domain. Are you willing to work under him?" The old man had already seen Li Mu. He sneered at Luosha King and said, "You are a 7th realm Ghost King, but you are actually working under a 6th realm human. Even if you don't feel ashamed, I feel ashamed for you." Luosha King was angered by his words. He attacked the array outside the city and said angrily, "Old Ghost, let's see if you can still laugh later." Luosha King had already made his move, and Ming Yi followed closely behind. Dazzling spell lights quickly bombarded the defensive array outside Mang Mountain City. This defensive array could at most block a 7th realm for a period of time. When Luosha King and Ming Yi attacked together, the array shook violently. Soon, it couldn't withstand it and collapsed. Ming Yi and Luosha King flew towards Azura King, and a huge battle erupted. The all-out battle of 2 7th realms was enough to destroy Mang Mountain City, not to mention 3 of them. To prevent the ghosts in the city from suffering an unexpected calamity, Li Mu summoned the Dao Bell. After the Dao Bell enlarged, it covered Mang Mountain City. Azura King was obviously no match for Luosha King and Ming Yi, but the 2 of them couldn't defeat him for a while. The 3 of them had similar cultivation. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to capture Azura King alive. If Azura King fought to the death, it would easily result in the 3 of them being defeated and injured. The Azura King did not intend to perish together with them. He was beaten back by the 2 of them. At a certain moment, he suddenly looked at Li Mu and shouted, "If you want this king to submit, then show me some real ability. Convince this king wholeheartedly." "What kind of ability is relying on others?" Li Mu smiled when he heard that. He stepped forward and said, "Come back." Luosha King and Ming Yi gave up on Azura King and flew back to Li Mu's side. Li Mu flew up. An image appeared in Azura King's mind. His body trembled, and he immediately added, "If you want me to submit, don't use that bow." Azura King had already seen the power of the bow in this person's hand. If he took out that bow, Azura King probably couldn't even take a single arrow. At this moment, he was actually very aggrieved. If this person could really defeat him fair and square, it would be fine if he became his subordinate. However, this person was clearly only at the 6th realm. With the power of a Dharma treasure, he could pose a fatal threat to Azura King, who was at the 7th realm. No one would be able to accept this. Faced with Azura King's request, Li Mu nodded lightly and said, "Okay." Seeing that he agreed, Azura King's body exploded with a cloud of black fog. For malicious ghosts with 2 horns on their heads and sharp fingernails flew out from the black fog. These malicious ghosts all had the aura of the 6th realm. As soon as they appeared, they teleported and disappeared. When they reappeared, they had already surrounded Li Mu from 4 directions. Luosha King immediately warned Li Mu, "Sir, be careful. This old ghost's doppelganger is very powerful." As soon as he finished speaking, a dark cloud suddenly appeared above the 4 malicious ghosts. Lightning flashed in the dark cloud, and a fierce wind swept up. The 4 malicious ghosts were held back, and Li Mu's figure had already disappeared. All of this happened so quickly that even Azura King didn't have time to react. By the time he realized the danger, a figure had already appeared in the void behind him. An illusory small sword pierced through the back of his head. Azura King was slightly injured in an instant. Then, a cold light exploded from Li Mu's hand and pierced through his body. An arrow and a spear. Although the injuries to him weren't fatal, they reduced his strength by more than half. He only had 40% of his peak strength left. Seeing Li Mu's spear piercing towards his throat again, the Azura King's expression changed drastically. He immediately said, "Stop. I submit, I submit." Chapter 597. The Azura King finally understood that the person in front of him had more than one powerful magic treasure. Although the spear did not threaten him as much as the bow, it could still injure his soul. In addition, he had a small sword with a magical power that was very effective against souls. Ghost cultivators were already at a disadvantage when fighting against him. Although he might be able to hold on for a while longer if he used all his trump cards, he would suffer more than just light injuries. Since he was weaker than him, it was not a humiliation to work under him. After convincing himself, the Azura King straightened his chest and clasped his hands at Li Mu, saying, "Greetings, my lord." The Azura King's strength was on par with the Rakshasa King's. He was slightly weaker than Feng Yi and far weaker than the 5 patriarchs of the demonic way. They were both at the 7th realm, but the 5 patriarchs of the demonic way relied on their experience and magical powers to be several times stronger than these ordinary 7th realm cultivators. Li Mu had only gradually realized that the difference in strength between cultivators at the same level could be so great after seeing Blood River and the Woman in White. With the help of magic treasures and magical powers, the strength he could unleash was stronger than the Rakshasa King and the Azura King. It was inferior to the 5 patriarchs of the demonic way, and also inferior to the Empress. He still had a long way to go before he could fight against Xuanzong head-on. The Azura King gave in so easily. The Rakshasa King's expression was somewhat disappointed. Back when he was under Li Mu, he had suffered a lot and suffered a lot. He had no choice but to submit to him. The Azura King, this old fellow, was sensible enough to bow his head so quickly. He only suffered some light injuries, which made the Rakshasa King feel a little unbalanced. He looked at the Azura King with resentment and said, "Hurry up and hand over your life spirit." The Azura King's expression changed slightly. Submitting was one thing, but handing over his life spirit meant that his life was completely under the control of the other party. He had cultivated bitterly for more than 100 years to achieve his current cultivation. He was not a slave. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "There's no need for a fate spirit. From now on, as long as you don't have any second thoughts and wholeheartedly work for the ghost realm, it will be fine." The Azura King was different from the Rakshasa King Ming Yi. Li Mu had no enmity with him, so there was no need for him to take his life spirit. Just like in the Demon Kingdom, he had the soul blood of the Blue Wolf King, but the 9-Heaven Snake King and the Flying Bear King were still free, just like before. The Azura King heaved a sigh of relief and glared at the Rakshasa King. Although Luosha King was unhappy, he didn't dare to say anything since Li Mu had spoken. He took the initiative and said, "After leaving Laozhan City, the next destination is Yiksha King's Yiksha Kingdom. Sir, let me lead the way." After the Azura King also submitted, only the Yiksha King and the Yama King were left in the ghost realm. When Li Mu and the others arrived at the Yiksha Kingdom, the Yiksha King's behavior was exactly the same as the Shura King's. However, unlike the Shura King, the Yiksha king didn't resist at all when he saw that the two ghost kings and the demon Dao elder had submitted to Li Mu. He directly chose to submit. Faced with such a lineup, he had no other choice. At this point, only the Yama king was left among the four ghost kings. This Yama king wasn't the Yama king under the Nether Ghost Lord, but the true overlord of the ghost realm. He controlled the most territory, and even the soul hall was suppressed. In order to get his fate spirit back sooner, the Rakshasa king said to Li Mu after the Yiksha king submitted, "There's only the Yama king left. There's no need to trouble Sir to deal with him personally. Sir and Madam, please rest here for a while. I will bring him to you." The three ghost kings and Ming Yi already had 4 7th realm ghost kings. It was more than enough to deal with the Yama king. There was indeed no need to mobilize so many people. Thus, Li Mu and Su He stayed in the Yiksha kingdom, while the Rakshasa king and the other three went to the Yama king's Yama palace. It had been a long time since Li Mu and Su He had such a peaceful time together. Thinking back to when she was at the Bay of Clearwater, Li Mu would visit her every few days. Sometimes, he would bring her a few books to relieve her boredom. Other times, they would sit by the lake and eat hot pot together. In the Demon Emperor's space, there was a vegetable garden that Li Mu had cultivated. The two of them sat by the lake. The vegetables that had just been plucked from the garden were still wet. Li Mu put a few leaves into the pot and inadvertently turned his head. He saw that Su He was staring straight at him, her gaze somewhat absent-minded. Li Mu stretched out his hand and stroked a few strands of hair in front of her forehead. He smiled and asked, "What's wrong?" Su He smiled and said, "It's nothing. It's been a long time since we sat down and ate together like this." The last time the two of them sat facing each other and ate hot pot together, Li Mu was still a small bailiff who would come to the Bay of Clearwater to find her whenever he was in danger. After a few years, he could already take charge of an area on his own. His subordinates were all 7th realm ghost kings that they couldn't even look up to before. Li Mu and Su He finished their hot pot, but the Rakshasa king and the others still hadn't returned. There wouldn't be any problem for the four of them to deal with the Yama king. Even if the Yama king fought with all his might, the battle would be over in a very short time. Moreover, the possibility of the Yama king fighting back against 4 7th realm ghost kings was very small. Li Mu and Su He waited for several more hours but still didn't see them. This period of time was enough for them to go back and forth from the Yiksha kingdom to the Yama palace several times. Li Mu sensed that something was wrong. He held Su He's hand and said, "Let's go and take a look." In the depths of the ghost realm, on top of a mountain that looked like a giant beast, a huge cage floated in the air. The Azura king, the Rakshasa king, the Yiksha king, and Gue were trapped inside the cage. No matter how they attacked, they couldn't break out of the cage. In front of the cage, the Yama king was wearing a black robe and a pearl and jade crown. He held a brush in one hand and coldly looked at the ghosts trapped in the cage. In front of him, there was another figure wearing a long robe and a crown. This old man was dressed in the same way as the Yama king. The Rakshasa king was trapped in the cage. He was both shocked and angry. He shouted, "Old ghost, I'm doing this for your own good. Considering our many years of friendship, you'd better listen to me. When that person comes, this matter won't be resolved so easily." The Yama king sneered and said disdainfully, "Friendship? The friendship you're talking about is bringing these people to persuade me to serve someone else as my master?" The Rakshasa king explained, "A wise man submits to circumstances. Have you forgotten about that bow of his?" Recalling that terrifying bow, the Yama king's expression changed slightly. He looked at the old man beside him and asked, "Master, what kind of magic treasure is that?" The old man fell into deep thought. After a long time, he spoke again, "What you saw should be Ao Xian Sun shooting bow. This bow condenses magic power into arrows and can kill enemies above their level. The stronger the magic power of the wielder, the stronger the bow. Ao Xian used this bow to conquer the 10 continents. After Ao Xian fell, this bow never appeared again." The Yama king whispered, "Sun shooting bow." At this moment, the fog in the distance rolled and fluctuated. 2 figures walked out from it. The Rakshasa king was overjoyed. He immediately said, "Sir, you're here. The old ghost beside the Yama king is very powerful. You must be careful." Actually, even without the Rakshasa king's reminder, Li Mu had already sensed that the old man's yin qi was very majestic. It was much more powerful than the Rakshasa king. Li Mu couldn't even be sure who was more powerful between the old man and the 5 ancestors of the demonic Tao. Su He's expression also became very serious. She said, "Be careful, he's very powerful." Li Mu didn't hesitate. With a thought, the sun's shooting bow appeared in his hand. The old man looked at the bow in his hand and said indifferently, "It really is Ao Xian's sun's shooting bow." Li Mu was slightly shocked. Another person who recognized the sun's shooting bow and could even call out Ao Xian's name. Could it be that this ghost also inherited some old monster's memory? The old man continued, "Let me see how much of the sun's shooting bow's power you can unleash." Before he could finish his sentence, his figure had already disappeared. At the same time, Li Mu also released the bowstring. The mana in his body was instantly drained, an array of golden light shot out. The golden light pierced through the void, and the old man's figure appeared in front of him. His body was condensed from black fog, and there was a big hole in his chest. The aura on his body was also slightly weaker than before, but the hole was constantly wriggling and quickly recovered to its original state. The old man's aura was still powerful, but Li Mu was already a lamp that had run out of oil. Seeing this, Su He formed a seal with both hands. From the mountain below, several ghostly figures suddenly flew out. A few 6th-level ghostly cultivators under the command of the King of Hell were under her control. They surrounded Li Mu and were ready to provide him with mana at any time. Just as Li Mu borrowed the mana of a ghostly cultivator and was about to shoot a second arrow, he noticed something strange. Ever since Su He had taken control of these ghost cultivators, the old man's expression had undergone a huge change. From shock, to disbelief, to trembling with excitement. The next moment, he faced Su He and knelt on one knee. He clasped his hands and said respectfully, "Greetings, Ghost Lord." Chapter 598. This powerful old man suddenly knelt down in front of Su He. Not only was Su He stunned, even Li Mu was a little confused. He had already drawn his second bow and was not in a hurry to shoot. Su He looked at the old man and asked in surprise, "What did you say?" "This old servant has waited for hundreds of years. Finally, you are here." The old man lowered his head humbly and knelt on one knee on the ground. He said, "Disciple, quickly pay your respects to the Ghost Lord." Hearing this, King Yen Luo hurried forward and knelt beside the old man. He said respectfully, "Greetings, Ghost Lord." Li Mu looked at Su He. Suddenly, a light flashed through his mind and he remembered something. The cultivation path of the ghosts in the current world was created by the mighty figure of the Ghost Clan. As a top-notch expert, there were naturally many followers by his side. Among them, there was a group of ghosts that were most loyal to him. They were named the Ghost Servant Clan by him. The other followers were his subordinates, and the Ghost Servant race was his servant. As a servant, the Ghost Servant race received a lot from him, but the condition was absolute loyalty. Their bloodlines were imprinted with the Divine Ability brand, and they were loyal to the Ghost Lord for generations. Although that mighty figure had already fallen, to the Ghost Servant race, the one who had the Heavenly Book and could control 10,000 ghosts was the new Ghost Lord, and also the master they were loyal to. Su He had the Heavenly Book and could control ghost cultivators. She was the master of the Ghost Servant race. This kind of servant was not like the Rakshasa king. Li Mu had used forceful methods to recruit subordinates. Their loyalty came from their bloodline and soul. They would never betray him. Li Mu whispered a few words to Su He. Only then did Su He recover from her shock. She said to the old man and King Yen Luo, "Get up." "Thank you, Ghost Lord." The old man and King Yen Luo got up. Su He looked at the Rakshasa king and the others trapped in the cage and said, "Let them out." "Understood." The elder nodded in agreement. Then, he waved his hand, and the cage opened automatically. Luo Sha King and the other 4 demons flew out. This person's strength was unfathomable. If he had been by their side in the land of the fallen gods, it would have been difficult for the female corpse in white to escape. Although the first ghost king had fallen a long time ago, he had left behind a huge inheritance for his successors. Any master of the Ghost Tao Heavenly Book could command the Ghost Servant clan. Yama Mountain, inside the main hall at the highest point. Suhi sat on a huge stone chair in front of the hall. The old man and King Yama stood below and said respectfully, "Your servant has been waiting for you for 500 years, 500 years. Hearing that, Rakshasa King was shocked. He could not help but exclaim, "How can anyone live for so long?" The Azura King and Yiksha King were also shocked. Only Ming-Yi looked indifferent. He even looked at the three demons with disdain and said, "Frogs at the bottom of a well. 500 years is nothing. There are experts in this world who have lived for 5,000 years. When the old man recognized the sun's shooting bow and called out Ao Xian's name, Li Mu knew that he was also an old monster who inherited his memories. He had at least 2,000 years of memories. Li Mu gave a simple explanation. Only then did the Rakshasa King understand. The Azura King was moved. He said in a low voice, "Why didn't I think of such a good idea? When my lifespan is about to end, I can use this method to pass on my memories. Wouldn't that make me immortal?" The Rakshasa King glanced at him and said indifferently, "Aren't you lying to yourself? When the time comes, you'll still be dead. The new Azura King will just be another person who has your memories. Rather than letting an outsider occupy your Mount Mang city and sleep with your Tao companion, you might as well die and be done with it." The Azura King did not think much of it. He said, "I will erase his memories. When the time comes, he will be me, and I will be him." Ming-Yi looked at them again and said mercilessly, "Do you think you can pass on anyone's memories? If you want to pass on your memories, you have to be at least at the 9th realm. Which one of you has this ability?" These words completely extinguished the Azura King's hope. Then, they looked straight at the old man. Only 9th realm experts could pass on their memories. Didn't that mean that this old man had reached the heavenly demon realm before? Li Mu was not surprised. Thousands of years ago was different from now. Although 9th realm experts were rare, they were not non-existent. In comparison, it was the Ghost Lord's cultivation level that shocked and astonished Li Mu. Just what kind of powerful cultivator was qualified to have a level 9 servant? Li Mu cupped his hands and asked, "Senior, how should I address you?" The old man saw that this young man had a close relationship with the Ghost Lord. He said, "You can call me Ghost Servant." The strength of a Ghost Servant was not below that of the 5 patriarchs of the demonic way. Such an expert was willing to bow his head and be a servant for thousands of years. It was enough to show the strength of the first Ghost Lord's spiritual imprint. Li Mu looked at him and asked, "You know Ao Xian?" The old man nodded and said, "He was an expert of the Black Dragon clan 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, Ao Xian used the sun's shooting bow to dominate the 10 continents and 4 seas. No one could match him. After Ao Xian disappeared, the sun's shooting bow, the number 1 divine artifact of the cultivation world, also disappeared." Li Mu continued to ask, "The number 1 divine artifact?" The old man's face revealed a look of reminiscence. He then said, "Ao Xian's cultivation was not the strongest at that time, but after he obtained the sun's shooting bow, he began to sweep through experts of the same level. Even the only 9th realm heavenly demon of the continent at that time fell at his hands. From then on, the cultivation world recognized the sun's shooting bow as the number 1 divine artifact." Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Who made the sun's shooting bow?" After comprehending the heavenly tomes, Li Mu also knew how top-grade magic treasures like the Tao Bell and the sky-piercing spear were made. He only could not understand the sun's shooting bow. The method of making this bow was not recorded in the heavenly tomes. The old man shook his head and said, "No one knows." The origin of the sun's shooting bow was also a mystery at that time. At that time, Ao Xian was chased by his enemies and had to hide everywhere. He disappeared for 10 years. 10 years later, when he reappeared with the sun's shooting bow in hand, he killed all his enemies. From then on, no one dared to provoke him. The ghost servant with thousands of years of memories obviously knew much more than Li Mu. Even the Rakshasa king and the others were listening attentively. Feng Yi had been in the devil path for more than 100 years. These things were not a secret to him, but to the Rakshasa king and the other ghosts, many of the things the ghost servant said subverted their understanding. Li Mu pondered for a moment and finally asked, "Since even you have reincarnated for so many times, why didn't the former ghost lord do the same?" The old man revealed a look of reverence and said, "Master said that the one who reincarnated was no longer him. Instead of deceiving ourselves like those fellows of the devil path, it is better to follow the heavenly Tao and wait for the next fated person." Compared to the ancestors of the devil path, the ghost lord clearly had the demeanor of a powerhouse. Li Mu thought of something and asked, "Do you know why the devil path has been constantly searching for the heavenly tomes for 10,000 years? The old man was silent for a moment and slowly said, "I don't know their specific purpose, but the devil path once chased after several ghost lords for the ghost Tao heavenly tomes." Li Mu looked at Feng Yi, who immediately said, "I don't know either. I only know that the heavenly tomes may hide the secret of eternal life. As long as there is news about the heavenly tomes, we must report it to the third ancestor." Chapter 599. Immortality. The Rakshasa king, Asura king, and the other ghosts couldn't help but purse their lips. Including their lifespan when they were human, their lifespan was no more than 360 years. Even in these 180 years, they had spent most of their time in seclusion cultivation. As a cultivator, whether human, demon, or ghost, who didn't want to live forever? Li Mu's expression was indifferent, but his heart wasn't calm either. The pursuit of immortality was driven by human instincts. Immortality was the ultimate goal that all cultivators pursued. If the complete 24 pages of the heavenly book contained the secret of immortality, Li Mu, who had 10 pages, was probably the closest person to this secret. Whether it was for the stability of the 10 continents or to pry into the secret of immortality, a real conflict would erupt between him and the demon sect sooner or later. At this time, the old ghost servant looked at Su He and respectfully said, "Ghost Lord's cultivation isn't low, but it's far from enough. For thousands of years, the demon sect has been searching for the heavenly book. They already know that the heavenly book is in your hands and will definitely send more experts to the ghost realm to snatch it. You must raise your cultivation as soon as possible to have the power to resist the demon sect." The ghost servant's worries weren't without reason. Li Mu had already confirmed from Feng that the third ancestor of the demonic path was indeed at the 8th realm. With his 10,000 years of experience, ordinary 8th realm experts might not be his match. Fortunately, the third ancestor of the demonic path seemed to be unable to step into the Zoo continent for some reason. Otherwise, the demonic path would sweep through everything on the Zoo continent. Su He's cultivation was at the 6th realm and could control 6th realm wandering souls and ghost cultivators. When she reached the 7th realm, those 7th realm wandering souls would also be under her control. At that time, the entire ghost realm would be under her control. In order to help her raise her cultivation quickly, Li Mu integrated the 4 ghost kings and the Soul Hall's sphere of influence and built statues of her in the 5 main cities of the ghost realm for all the ghosts in the city to worship. Among all the cultivation methods, telekinesis was the easiest way to raise one's cultivation. The abundant yin qi of the ghost realm also provided her with an endless supply of cultivation resources. Li Mu gave the ghost heavenly book to her after deciphering it. Next, she would have to rely on herself to cultivate. 1 month later, Jiangyin County. Recently, something big happened in Jiangyin County, which shocked the entire cultivation world. The Great Zhou's Jiangyin County bordered the ghost domain. In order to obtain soul power, cultivators would often enter the ghost domain in groups to hunt wandering souls. The wandering souls at the border of the ghost domain were not strong. As long as one did not go too deep, there would not be too much danger. But starting from half a month ago, 5th realm and even 6th realm wandering souls and ghost cultivators began to appear frequently at the borders of the ghost realm. All the human cultivators who entered the ghost realm were chased out by them. Since then, almost no human cultivators dared to approach the ghost domain. Without a doubt, something big must have happened in the ghost realm. After the Jiangyin County government discovered this abnormal matter, they immediately reported it to the imperial court. The Great Zhou court attached great importance to this matter and sent several consecrators to investigate. However, these imperial consecrators came out a few days after entering the ghost domain and brought a piece of news. Not long ago, a powerful cultivator appeared in the ghost domain. She subdued the 5 major factions of the ghost domain and unified the ghost domain. She was worshipped as the Ghost Lord. From then on, whether it was the ghost cultivators or wandering souls of the ghost domain, they all belonged to the Ghost Lord. Cultivators were forbidden from entering the ghost domain to hunt. Those who violated this rule would be killed without mercy. When this news came out, it caused a huge uproar in the cultivation world. Not only did this mean that the ghost domain was no longer a chaotic place ruled by heroes, but since the Yao nation was unified, there was another powerful faction near the Zhu continent. The situation on the continent would definitely change because of the unification of the ghost domain. At the same time, the cultivators of the Zhu continent would lose a treasured place to obtain cultivation resources. Fortunately, although the situation in the ghost domain had changed greatly, it had shown goodwill to the Great Zhou court. The ghost domain's master sent an envoy to the Great Zhou court to bring a non-aggression agreement. This was naturally great news for the people of the Great Zhou. For hundreds of years, the Great Zhou had been facing threats from the Yao nation, the ghost domain, and the countries in the south. Now that the Shin nation had changed masters, it sent an envoy to the Great Zhou not long ago to express its submission. The other small countries in the south also sent tributes year after year and were extremely obedient. As for the Yao nation and the ghost domain, it was the first time they had signed an agreement with the Great Zhou to not invade each other and to mutually benefit each other. This was something that had never happened since the establishment of the Great Zhou, or even since the birth of a unified central dynasty on the Zhu continent. Her Majesty the Empress had been on the throne for many years. Together with Lord Li, she had quelled foreign invasions and resolved internal troubles. Her achievements had already surpassed that of the previous emperors, allowing the Great Zhou's national power to reach an unprecedented peak. Jiangyin County, the border between the Great Zhou and the ghost domain. 2 figures walked out of the fog. Li Mu glanced back. Shangguanli glanced at him and said, "If you can't bear to leave, I can go back to Chengdu alone to report on my mission." Li Mu withdrew his gaze and said, "Let's go." This month, he had been helping Su He manage the affairs in the ghost domain. The major forces had just been unified, and there were many complicated matters that needed to be dealt with. Fortunately, this was Li Mu's old profession. He had already helped the Empress and Phantom Princess with the same thing countless times. It was hard to say. He was only one person, but he had to take care of the hearts of the Great Zhou, the Yao nation, and the ghost domain. He could only blame his women for being too capable. 2 of the 10 continents were under their control. Not only did she have to cultivate, but she also had to learn how to manage the affairs of a nation. Su He would be very busy in the future. Although Li Mu wanted to share some of her burden, he had stayed in the ghost domain for too long. If he didn't leave soon, other places would probably catch fire. Phantom Princess was still in seclusion trying to break through to the 7 Tails. Li Mu and Shangguanli went to Baiyun Mountain first. Then, they brought Lu Hanyan and Li Qing back to Chengdu together. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing both knew of Su He's existence. On the way back, Li Mu told them everything that had happened in the ghost domain. Then, Lu Hanyan rolled her eyes the entire way. With Phantom Princess and the Empress as a foundation, it was not difficult for them to accept Su He. However, it was not easy to get past the Empress. In Changle Palace, the Empress sat on the dragon throne with Zhongling in her arms. Shangguanli and Mr. Mei stood on either side of her. Li Mu stood below, reporting to her. The ghost domain and the demon path all wanted that page of the ghost domain's heavenly book. Fortunately, it did not fall into their hands. In addition, before I came back, I subdued the ghost domain's major forces. From now on, the Great Zhou will not have to worry about the ghost domain's invasion. Zhou looked at him indifferently and said, "You subdued more than just the ghost domain's forces, right?" The Empress was obviously implying something. Li Mu raised his head and glanced at Shangguanli, who was standing beside her. Shangguanli snorted coldly and said, don't think that I will help you hide this from Her Majesty. Li Mu looked at the Empress and smiled awkwardly. Her Majesty already knows. Zhou looked at Li Mu angrily and said, is it because Han Yan is not beautiful enough, Li Qing is not gentle enough, Wan Wan and Xiao Bai are not obedient enough, or is it because that fox is not charming enough? Why don't you know how to be satisfied? Li Mu sighed helplessly. It's because of the debt from before. Zhou had clearly thought about this problem. After glaring at Li Mu, she pointed at the imperial table in front of them and said, Ali, grind the ink for him. There was paper and brush on the imperial table. Shang Wanli walked over and began to grind the ink with ease. Then, Zhou looked at Li Mu and said, write. Li Mu was puzzled and asked, write what? Zhou Qiong said indifferently, what other debts do you owe, and what other sisters and sisters do you have? Write them all down for me. I'm not an unreasonable person. Before I met you, I didn't care about the debts you owed. But from now on, if you continue to provoke foxes and ghosts and have new sisters and sisters, don't blame me for being impolite. Li Mu looked up at the Empress. Could it be that this was a piece of paper to exempt him from liability? Could it be that the Empress would not care about the names he wrote on this paper? Was the Empress not afraid that he would randomly write down 8 or 10 names? Li Mu was not so stupid. This was obviously the Empress testing him. He shook his head and said firmly, Your Majesty, there are no more. Zhou thought for a moment and said, I can see that all the young and beautiful women around you are likely to be your creditors. Who else do you know? Write them down for me. Li Mu finally realized that the Empress wanted to completely cut off his chances of womanizing in the future. If the names that did not appear on this paper today were to be related to him in the future, it would mean that Li Mu did not keep his promise, and she would not be polite. The Empress would definitely pay special attention to the names that appeared on this paper in the future, and would not let Li Mu be involved with them. This was a good plan. Li Mu glanced at the Empress. Zhou snorted and said, Write. If he did not write, he was afraid that he would not be able to pass this test. Li Mu helplessly picked up the brush and began to think about which young and beautiful women were around him. After a moment, he began to write. Inxin, Tingxin, Fulin, Hu Lu, Ali, Mei, Shang Wanli stood behind Li Mu. When she saw her name, although her expression was calm, her heart was shy and complicated. When Mr. Mei saw the word Mei, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile. After Li Mu wrote the word Mei, he suddenly remembered that Mr. Mei was beautiful and charming, but he was not young anymore. So he picked up the brush and gently crossed out the word Mei. Then, a murderous intent came from behind, making him shudder. Chapter 600. High up in the sky outside Changle Palace, the light of spells flickered. The cultivators with some cultivation in the divine capital all felt the ripples of Dharma power in the sky. They didn't know who was so bold as to fight openly in the divine capital. They didn't care about the cultivators of the Department of Worship and the Inner Guard at all. Inside Changle Palace, Zhou held a piece of paper in her hand, her beautiful brows slightly furrowed. As a woman, she naturally wasn't willing to share favor with other women. Lu and Li, the two girls, had long been married to Li Mu. She was only a latecomer, she didn't have the qualifications to compete with the two of them. She had tried her best to guard against that fox from the Yao country, but she still wasn't able to guard against it. The other party was a step ahead of her. She could only blame herself for being too slow, she didn't have much to complain about. As for that person from the ghost realm, since Li Mu owed her a debt of affection in his early years, if she didn't let go, it would be unreasonable. But if after her, he still frequently encountered new peach blossoms, that would be something that Zhou couldn't tolerate. That was why she thought of this method to completely cut off Li Mu's thoughts of continuing to flirt with other women. There was no need to worry about the latecomers. In the future, she only needed to be extra vigilant against the people written on the paper. Zhou looked at the names on the paper, her gaze deep in thought. Enchanting, Ting, although those two little snakes hadn't seen each other for a long time, one of them didn't hide her feelings towards Li Mu. Although the other hid her feelings very well, she still couldn't hide it from her eyes. From Strange Stories from a Strange Story and White Snake, these novels that Li Mu had written in his early years, it could be seen that he hadn't just been interested in a fox demon and a snake demon for a day or two. Now, he already had a pair of fox demons, but he didn't have a single snake beauty. In a sense, Ting Xian was her teacher. Zhou Yi had long known that she had feelings for Li Mu. She took advantage of Ting Xian's absence to get him first. She always felt that she had let Ting Xian down. If she was still on guard against Ting Xian, wouldn't she be very much like the annoying female supporting characters in most novels? She was a queen, not a supporting female lead. She couldn't burn the bridge after crossing it. Let's put the beautiful snake sisters aside for now. Next is Ting Xian. There are many dragon girls in Li Mu's story, so I can't rule out the possibility that he has other thoughts about Ting Xian. Just in case, should I let Ting Xian go back to the South Sea? Zhou Yi glanced at Ting Xian, who was gnawing on a duck's neck in a corner of Changle Palace. She felt that she was too cruel. Although Ting Xian could eat a little, when Li Mu was not around, Ting Xian stayed by her side and listened to her orders at all times. Ting Xian even put down his dignity as a dragon and let her ride him out to enjoy the scenery. Even if he didn't contribute much, he still worked hard. Ting Xian only left the South Sea because she ran away from the marriage. If he let her go back just like that, wouldn't he be pushing her into the fire pit again? Zhou Qiong shook his head. In the end, he decided to stay and satisfy himself. As for Hu Lu, Zhou Yi wasn't worried. There was already a fox in the Thousand Fox country. Hu Lu and Huan Ji's relationship was like Wan Wan and Lu Hanyan. Hu Lu couldn't be considered her opponent at all. If it were her master, it would be more likely. Next was Ali. Although Ali was beautiful and young, she wouldn't like Li Mu. She wasn't interested in men. Zhou Yi didn't think that anything would happen between her and Li Mu. As for Mr. Mei, it was even more impossible. Her age plus a few years was old enough to be Li Mu's mother. Li Mu directly crossed out her name. In this way, it seemed that she didn't have any opponents. Zhou Yi felt a little happy. Then she put down the paper, rested her chin on one hand, and asked, "Ali, do you think I'm too jealous?" "That's how it should be." Shangguanli snorted softly and said, "He relies on his good looks and high cultivation to flirt everywhere. Your Majesty, if you don't go overboard with him, you may have to bestow him a bigger residence in the future so that he can live in his sister's." Zhou Yi no longer doubted herself. She nodded and said, "You're right. I don't have that many houses to give him." Half an hour later, Li Mu returned home, exhausted. Because he had deleted Mr. Mei's name, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and insisted on fighting 300 rounds with him. Li Mu couldn't hurt her, so he could only endure. Fighting with her was much more tiring than fighting with the 5 ancestors of the demonic path. Li Mu learned a lot about the 5 ancestors of the demonic path from the ghost servant. This woman was called Xian Ming. In the era of the ghost servant, she was a top powerhouse in the world. Her cultivation had reached the 9th realm and her name had shaken the 10 continents. Unlike ghost cultivators, demon cultivators, and human cultivators, she cultivated the Tao of corpses. Moreover, she cultivated this Tao to the peak and achieved the sky corpse body. Everywhere she went, the land was barren and not a single blade of grass grew. She only needed to take a breath and she could suck away the essence, blood and souls of all living creatures within a certain range. Her strength was not weaker than Blood River at his peak. After learning this from the ghost servant, Li Mu knew that it was pure luck that he was able to kill Blood River. The ancestors of the demonic path were ranked according to strength. In other words, Blood River's strength at his peak was even stronger than the white-clothed female corpse. Unfortunately, Blood River's cultivation was only at the 6th realm at that time. In the end, he died under the sun-shooting bow and the sky-piercing spear. Once he grew up, he would be more difficult to deal with than the 5 ancestors of the demonic path. According to Ming Yi, the 3 elders of Yu and Ming were under the command of the 3 ancestors of the demonic path. Compared to Blood River and Xian Ming, this person was the most difficult opponent to deal with. His cultivation was at the 8th realm, the true peak of the continent. He also had 10,000 years of fighting experience. In the beginning, many powerhouses of the demonic path chose to inherit their memories. However, most of them fell in the long river of history due to various accidents. To be able to inherit their memories to this day, whether it was their temperament or strength, they were not comparable to ordinary powerhouses. Unless he also reached the 8th realm, Li Mu had no confidence in defeating him even with the sun's shooting bow in hand. Moreover, since there were the 3 ancestors of the demonic path, there must be the first and second ancestors. Li Mu knew nothing about them at present. However, there was no doubt that they would be stronger and more difficult to deal with than the 3 ancestors. While Li Mu was worried, on the ghost island in the depths of the South Sea, the white-clothed woman stood in the tower, her voice devoid of any emotion. She slowly said, "We can't obtain the Ghost Path Heavenly Book. I hid in the ghost realm for a month, but I still couldn't approach the Heavenly Book. This generation's ghost servants are very strong, not any weaker than me." The skeleton-like 3 ancestors of the demonic path slowly opened their eyes and said, "With the birth of a new ghost lord, it will be difficult for the ghost realm to interfere in the future. Although we can't obtain the Heavenly Book, knowing its whereabouts isn't a complete waste of time. We've already waited for 10,000 years, there's no need to rush." In these 10,000 years, there had been countless times when they knew the whereabouts of the Heavenly Book but didn't have the strength to seize it. However, the owner of the Heavenly Book would always fall, while the powerhouses of the demonic path would multiply endlessly. As long as they knew the whereabouts of the Heavenly Book, they would always have a chance to seize it. This included Li Mu. At most, his lifespan would be 3 or 4 60 years. In the worst-case scenario, he would only have to wait for another 200 years, the time of one reincarnation cycle of memories. The tower gradually quieted down. After an unknown period of time, a figure flew in from outside. Ming Er flew into the tower and knelt on one knee. He respectfully said, "Greetings, 3rd ancestor and 5th ancestor." The 3rd ancestor opened his eyes again and looked at him. He asked, "Have you investigated the matter I asked you to?" Ming Er revealed an excited expression and said, reporting to 3rd ancestor, "I've investigated it." This subordinate hid in the Yong capital and found an opportunity to search the soul of an important member of the Yong imperial family. "I obtained an important piece of information. The Yong imperial family really does have a page of the Heavenly Book." Chapter 601. In recent days, Li Mu had a rare moment of free time. Phantom Princess was in seclusion in the Yao Nation, using the spirit of telekinesis gathered by the 4 major demon clans to attack the 7 tails. Su He had to cultivate and learn how to manage the newly unified ghost realm, so she didn't have time to care about him. In the divine capital, he spent most of his time with his wife or riding Happy Heart, traveling around with the Empress. Occasionally, he would attend morning court and stroll around the consecration department. The imperial court, which used to be divided by several factions, now only had the Empress's faction led by Zhang Chun. In the past 2 years, the Shao clan and the Zhou clan had dispersed and gradually lost their power. The important figures of the 2 families seemed to have given up and rarely appeared in the imperial court. The Zhou clan and the Shao clan used to be giants that Li Mu couldn't defeat. They were also a major obstacle to the Empress's power. But now, it was very difficult for them to be Li Mu's opponent. His opponent was Xuanzong, who was of the demonic path. They were the top factions of the continent's righteous and evil paths. Compared to these 2, the Shao clan and the Zhou clan were not worth mentioning. On this day, Li Mu sent Lu Hanyan and Li Qing back to Baiyun Mountain and took a look at the sect's situation. After leaving the ghost realm, he left a large amount of spirit jade and soul power in the sect to raise the cultivation of the low-level disciples. In just a few months, the Fulu school's overall strength had increased by a level. In terms of quantity and quality of low-level disciples, they were already catching up to Xuanzong at a fast speed. Then, Li Mu made another trip to the Yao Nation. The 4 major demon clans had united, which was rare, and the entire Yao Nation was extremely cohesive. Large and small demon clans were incorporated into the Yao Nation. At the same time, the Yao Nation also issued laws. The previously chaotic Yao nation was gradually becoming orderly. Phantom Princess had yet to come out of seclusion. Like the Empress, she used the spirit of telekinesis to forcefully raise her cultivation when her magic power was far below the 7th realm. She was not as natural as Jadesen's. A year and a half of seclusion was considered very fast. After returning to the god's capital, Li Mu wanted to take advantage of this rare opportunity to further his relationship with the Empress. However, a piece of news caught his attention. The demon path had suddenly invaded the state of Yong, and the state of Yong's envoy requested that the great Zhou dispatch troops to reinforce the Yong imperial family. Li Mu had two impressions of the Yong kingdom. First, the small and sparsely populated Yong kingdom had condensed the will of the people. In less than a century, the citizens of the kingdom had condensed 3 strands of Emperor's qi. Even the great Zhou could not compare. Secondly, Li Mu's painting mantra had been swindled from a young envoy from the Yong kingdom. Great Zhou had no reason to refuse Yong's request for help. On one hand, Great Zhou bordered the southern kingdoms. Once Yong fell, the southeastern border of Great Zhou would face the threat of the demon path. Resisting the demon path and aiding Yong was a strategic necessity for Great Zhou. On the other hand, the relationship between the Great Zhou and the state of Yong was that of a suzerain state and a vassal state. Every year, the state of Yong would pay tribute to the Great Zhou, and the Great Zhou would protect them. Within the imperial study, the Empress had just received the Yong envoy. The envoy was a scholarly middle-aged man. He wore a scholar's robe and knelt in front of the palace, pleading, "I implore Great Zhou to dispatch troops and assist the state of Yong in repelling the demon path." In front of outsiders, Zhou Yi regained her majesty as the Empress and calmly said, "The state of Yong is a vassal state of Great Zhou. If the state of Yong is in trouble, Great Zhou will naturally not sit idly by." Saying this, she called out in a deep voice, "Li Mu." Li Mu walked to the front of the palace and cupped his hands. "This subject is here." Zhou Yi said, "I will leave the matter of assisting the state of Yong to you." Li Mu loudly said, "As you command." The Yong imperial family had 3 transcending realm experts. If even they couldn't resolve the problem, it would definitely be very thorny. The demon path would definitely have dispatched more than 1 7th realm elder. There was also the possibility that some 10,000-year-old monster would personally take action. As such, there was no need to dispatch the Consecration Bureau, the Southern Army, or the Eastern Army. Perhaps only the 4 deans of the great academies and the Empress would be of some use. The Empress couldn't possibly leave the divine capital to assist the state of Yong, and the deans of the 4 great academies had the responsibility of guarding the divine capital. Li Mu promptly made a decision and used a sound transmission artifact to contact Xian Jizi, asking him to invite the experts of the Southern Sect, Northern Sect, and Danding Sect to Yong. Distant water couldn't quench a present thirst. These 3 sects were in the vicinity of Yong and could provide assistance as quickly as possible. Afterwards, Li Mu executed the earth-shrinking art and personally headed to Yong. With the Empress's status, she couldn't personally head there. In the imperial court, only he had the qualifications and strength to represent the Empress. Using the earth-shrinking art to travel was much faster than flying or riding artifacts. In less than 2 hours, a radiance flashed in the sky above Yong's capital. The space fluctuated, and Li Mu's figure walked out. Just as he arrived at Yong's capital, Li Mu sensed several powerful auras. Somewhere in Yong's capital, there were 6 7th realm auras. Li Mu was very familiar with 3 of them. They were the auras of Orthodox Taoism. The other 3 were also 7th realm auras, but they were very weak. It was obvious that their injuries weren't light. Li Mu's figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in a great hall within Yong's imperial palace. The 3 old men looked at him and smiled. "Martial nephew has arrived." Li Mu cupped his hands towards them and said, "Greetings, martial uncles." Other than Xuanzong, the 5 sects of Taoism were now as close as a family. After receiving Xian Jizi's message, the Southern Sect, Northern Sect and Pill Cauldron Sect each dispatched a Grand Elder, rushing to Yong immediately. After a simple greeting, Li Mu asked, "Where are the people of the Devil Dao?" An old man said, "After the 3 of us rushed over, we joined forces with the 3 Taoists from Yong and repelled them. Li Mu asked again, who came from the Devil Tao? That old man said, 3 Seventh Realm Elders. One of them is very powerful. She could fight the 4 of us alone. I didn't expect the Devil Tao to have such a terrifying expert, Li Mu asked. Is it a white-clothed woman who is proficient in corpse arts? The 3 were shocked at the same time. The Pill Cauldron Sect's Grand Elder asked, Martial Nephew knows this person? Li Mu nodded and said, she is one of the 5 ancestors of the demon sect. Her strength is unfathomable. I didn't expect her injuries to recover so quickly. The Pill Cauldron Sect Elder was shocked. This person is so powerful. Who could injure her? Li Mu shook his head and said, that's not important. What's important is why did the Devil Tao suddenly invade Yong? He understood the Devil Tao very well. For thousands of years, although the Devil Tao had been wreaking havoc on the continent, their goal was only the heavenly tomes. They rarely took the initiative to invade unrelated countries, especially Yong, which bordered the Great Zhou and was surrounded by a circle of smaller countries. Even if the Devil Tao wanted to encroach on the countries in the south, they had no reason to start with Yong. At this moment, an old man wearing a black dragon robe bowed to the group and said, many thanks for your assistance. An elder smiled and said, you're welcome. The Devil Tao has wreaked havoc on the continent. Everyone has the right to punish them. Li Mu looked at the 3 experts from Yong's imperial family and got straight to the point, asking, do you know why the Devil Tao attacked Yong? The 2 old men's lips moved, wanting to say something but hesitating. In the end, the old man in the black dragon robe sighed and said, forget it. Now that things have come to this, that secret is no longer a secret. He looked at Li Mu and said, my clan has a page of the heavenly tomes. This has always been a secret of my clan. However, for some reason, the Devil Tao suddenly learned of it, leading to today's events. Li Mu was shocked. You have the heavenly tomes. He finally understood why the 5 ancestors of the Devil Tao had personally come to Yong. An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. The Devil Tao had struggled at death's door for 10,000 years for the heavenly tomes. In the entire ancestral province, anyone or power that once possessed a heavenly tomes was the target of the Devil Tao. For example, the 6 Taoist sects had the strength to protect the heavenly tomes. The Devil Tao was helpless. For example, the 3 Buddhist sects of the Shan Kingdom possessed the heavenly tomes but did not have the strength. The heavenly tomes were snatched away by the Devil Tao, cutting off their inheritance. The Yong Kingdom's heavenly tomes were hidden. It was fine if he secretly comprehended it, but once the Devil Tao learned of it, they would definitely come to snatch it away. Li Mu urgently asked, where is your heavenly tomes? The old man shook his head and said, it has already fallen into the hands of that woman. Although Li Mu felt that it was a pity, he was not surprised. None of those old monsters were easy to deal with. Even if the 3 Yong experts worked together, they would not be her match. If they had not handed over the heavenly tomes, their souls would have likely been scattered and they would have become cultivation resources for the mysterious underworld race. He looked at the 3 Yong experts. It was no wonder that Yong had developed so rapidly these past few years. The heavenly tomes must have played a role in this. At this moment, the old man in black dragon robes worriedly said, the heavenly tomes were stolen because our skills were inferior. However, Linglong was also taken away by them. She possesses the heart of 7 orifices and can decipher the heavenly tomes. If the Devil Tao forces her to decipher the heavenly tomes, the Devil Tao will definitely become even more powerful in the future. Li Mu stared blankly for a moment before asking, wait a minute. What Linglong? What heart of 7 orifices? The old man sighed. Linglong is my Yong Kingdom's princess. She was born with the heart of 7 orifices and can decipher the contents of the heavenly tomes. This was originally a secret of my imperial family. I don't know who leaked it to the Devil Tao. Li Mu was momentarily speechless. The heart of 7 orifices, how could there be such a thing?